Okay, apologies for that slight technical delay. So good morning, everyone. I'm Councillor Paul Heinrich. I'm chairing the meeting Development Committee this morning. For anyone who hasn't attended one of these meetings before, the officers who provide and present our reports and offer technical advice sit either side of me at the top table. In front of me in the central area sit the members of the committee who'll be making decisions on the items on the agenda. And officers, please introduce themselves.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Jeff Lyon. I'm the Development Manager.
Good morning. My name's Emma Bryce. I'm the Democratic Service Officer.
I'm Darryl Watson, one of the Development Management Team Leaders.
Emma Hullams, Democratic Services Officer.
I'm Mark Burns. I'm here to present items for High Kelling and Holt.
Darren Mortimer, Highways Development Management, North Norfolk.
I'm Fiona Croxton, Solicitor of the Council.
I'm Alana Hogarth, Senior Conservation and Design Officer.
And finally, Russell Williams, Assistant Director for Planning.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome members of the public, both those in the chamber and those who are watching on YouTube live stream. If you have registered to speak, I will call you to the front, to the end of this bench at the appropriate time. For formal business, just the usual notices. Fire alarm, we're not expecting a drill today, so if the alarm does sound, it is genuine, in which case please follow officers using the marked exits and make your way to either the car park at the front of the building or the flagpole to the rear. Do not use the lift. Could you please ensure that mobile phones are switched to silent or off, please? I expect us to be taking a break probably around about 11, depends on how long the first items or two to take. If you're waiting for the last three, I suspect we may not get to them until probably after 12 o'clock. You don't want to hang around while you're waiting for any of those last three, then feel free to go and return later. Toilets are out in the foyer. Apologies for absence, please, Emma.
We've had apologies from Councillor Varley and we've got Councillor Boyle as a substitute.
Thank you. Item 4 is minutes of the meeting of 23rd of January and 6th of February. These will be presented at the next Development Committee meeting. I have no items of urgent business, in which case the order of business will be as on your papers. We move to item 7, declarations of interest. Right, Bill. Councillor McDonald.
Item 7, PF 241079 for Fakenham. The applicant is known to me and the family is known to me.
Thank you.
Item 12, PF 241760. That's family. So I need to exclude myself from it.
Yeah, will you will be leaving the room for that?
Yeah,
item?
yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was just going to abstain.
You'll abstain. Okay, I'm happy to allow to speak as it's a relationship. I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, in relation to item 10, the Fakenham application, as portfolio holder for sustainable growth, I had early conversations with them, but it has no bearing on the proceedings here today, and I have no preconceived ideas. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Vickers.
As one of the ward councillors for Fakenham South, I've spoken to residents who are both in favour of the McDonald's application and against it. I would like to speak as one of the ward councillors. I don't regard myself as predetermined and I'd like to reserve the right to vote if I see fit, if that's all right with you, Chairman. I don't feel that I'm predetermined at this point.
Okay, you may speak and vote. Thank you. Right, let us move to the first substantive item. Item 8, Sheringham, PF/24/1229, 41 retirement living apartments. Watson.
Apologies for the delay, Chair. Firstly, there's an update to the report. We've received revised comments from the Planning Obligations Coordinator at Norfolk County Council. In addition to the fire hydrant, as referred to in the report, a contribution of £7,585 towards increasing the capacity of the library serving the development is requested. The revised comments are due to the fact that it was assessed by the County Council in terms of it being a care facility rather than retirement apartments, which are essentially the same as single dwellings. The applicant has confirmed their agreement to providing this contribution. So the recommendation on pages 33 and 34 are accordingly amended to include reference to this matter and also to secure this and the GIRAM's tariff payment either through an agreement under section 106 of the Town and Country Planning Act or through a payment under section 111 of the Local Government Act 1972. And now turning to the presentation, it's item 8, starting on page 7 of the agenda. This slide shows the general location for context. The site is at the corner of the Esplanade and the Boulevard. The town centre is off to the east, the seafront is to the north. A small part of the site extends to the west towards to the rear of the existing Upshur Court blocks, with the access extending to the south to link up to St Nicholas Place. Next, please. This shows the location at a larger scale. The site wraps around the rear of Upshur Court. The small leg to the west is where there is an existing garage block to be demolished. The existing access runs through to St Nicholas Place between numbers 12 and 14. Next one, please. Now with the site overlaid on the aerial photo, main part of the site is compacted ground, stroke wasteland, and an area of scrub, and a block of garages. And you can see the block of garages to the west there to be demolished. This is the existing access that serves the parking for Upshur Court, which would be utilised, and that extends through to St Nicholas Place. This is to show the site in the context of designated heritage assets. The original Sheringham Conservation Area is to the east. You can see where there's a sort of line sort of running roughly centrally from top to bottom, with the later conservation extension to the west. This wraps around part of the north side of the Esplanade and incorporates the Burlington, which is a 5-storey building, and extends to sort of just towards the Lees along the cliff top. The War Memorial is a Grade 2 listed building sitting on the roundabout. Thanks, please. This is the existing site plan. Other than the garage blocks to be demolished, there are no other buildings and structures on it. To the west is a block of flats at Upshur Court that's set back from the road, as labelled on the plan. There are blocks of garages serving Upshur Court, and there's the access running between number 12 and 14 St Nicholas Place. Next, please. This is the proposed site plan. It shows the site of the building with its longest frontage to the boulevard. It's set back slightly from the roadside boundaries along which there'd be planting. It cuts in slightly at the corner of the two roads just here. So it's not ideal. It extends forward of the adjacent Upshur Court block. Part of the rear elevation steps back where it faces windows in the east elevation of the Upshur Court block that's immediately adjacent. In this space, there's a small courtyard garden for residents, and there'd be another towards the rear of the building, as shown in sort of green on the plan. Parking will be to the rear, just here, and also in that area there where the garage blocks will be. That garage block is to be demolished. The orange dots show the proposed EV charging points. Finally, the existing access from St Nicholas Place, which would be upgraded, properly surfaced and widened within its existing boundaries. This shows the ground floor plan, which is an enlarged extract of the site plan shown previously, showing more clearly how the building sits in relation to the site boundaries. Shaded blue are the one-bedroom apartments, purple are the two beds, and the communal areas of those shown in yellow. The pedestrian access points from the boulevard and to the rear via the car park are denoted by the orange triangle. So there's two entrances into the building from the boulevard, and then one at the rear, which say it connects through to the car park. Next, please. This is the proposed ground floor, first floor. The little rectangles of the balconies to the flats fronting the boulevard and the esplanade. There are a couple of setback sections on the elevation to the boulevard, which is the top bit facing the boulevard is the top part of the plan to help break up the mass of that long elevation. The setback section to the rear continues from the ground floor upwards across all floors. Yeah, this is a setback section which was you could see on the site plan which faces the windows in the inside elevation of Upchurch Court. Right, next slide, please. Yes, this is a second floor plan. It's essentially the same as the first. Next, please. And as is the third floor. Now moving on to the proposed elevations. This is the east elevation facing the boulevard. The ground floor section would have a darker red, be finished in a darker red brick, as you can see from the image. You can see the setback sections finished in contrasting buff brick with slightly lower roof levels. There are areas of brick detailing to the sides of some of the windows. It also shows the projecting balconies. The areas of brick detailing, the sort of shaded areas to the side of some of the windows in that image. Next, please. On the left is the north elevation to the esplanade. Has essentially the same detailing as to the elevation I've just shown you. On the right, the south elevation with the contrasting buff brick section running in the centre to break up the two gable elements. There's areas again of projecting header brick detailing to give interest to the elevation. Next, please. This is the elevation from the west elevation or rear. It would be screened in part by the Upchurch Court flat, so would not be seen in its entirety. On the blank gables that would sit forward of the adjacent Upchurch Court block, that's a bit towards the left hand as you're looking at it. There would be hit and miss projecting brick detail, again to sort of break up what would otherwise be a blank elevation there. Next, please. This is the two street scenes. The top is that facing the esplanade and shows the height of the proposed building in relation to Upchurch Court. As originally proposed, the building had a flat roof. Amending it for a pitch roof has increased that height. To the left is a building on the esplanade with the boulevard running between. On the bottom shows the elevation to the boulevard, and it also shows the roads, the treatment to the boundaries along the roadside. Next, please. This is a 3D image of the proposed development, showing both the roadside elevations, sort of looking across from the corner of the esplanade and the boulevard. Next, please. Now, I've got some photo montages of the proposed development, which are on a separate presentation because they couldn't be incorporated in this one, but I'll show you those towards the end before we get onto the main issues. Next slide, please. Now, the next slide I'm going to show you show the plans for the development which has got permission as set out on page 21 of the agenda. Whilst this development is not advanced as a fallback, i.e. there's no real prospect of it being carried out if permission for this current scheme was refused, it does set out some parameters in terms of the scale height and massing, which is for the site. Next, please. This is the block plan of the part of the Upchurch Court development with extant planning permission, and it's sort of shown indicatively how the existing site relates to it. So comparing that with what is proposed now, it would similarly sit forward of the adjacent block of Upchurch Court flats towards the Esplanade. There's a slightly greater cutout in the sort of siting on the corner of the boulevard and the Esplanade. The rear elevation is set back further from the side elevation of the adjacent Upchurch Court block. The southern part of this block, of the block to the boulevard, is set back slightly further. That's sorry, if you can go back, please. Yeah, actually the southern end of the block to the boulevard steps back, and the extant scheme would have had a drive-through access from the boulevard through to the parking at the rear. Next, please. This shows the elevations of the scheme with the extant permission. At the top is the elevation to the Esplanade with the current application site frontage annotated by the red arrows. So to the right of the right pointing arrow is where the current Upchurch Court block adjacent to the site sits. At the bottom is the elevation to the boulevard. It has a distinct step. It's not clear how this was going to be achieved, as the site is gently sloping north to south, so it's not clear whether the ground was going to be lowered in part or made up. But and then you can see the sort of tunnel, which is the vehicle access through to the parking at the rear. Next, please. And this is just the rear elevation of the development with extant permission. So turning to the site photos, please. Next slide. Next slide. This first slide shows the site looking from the northeast side of the roundabout. The site is annotated, and then standing sort of roughly opposite side from the east, on the east side of the boulevard. Next, please. Now this is looking at the site southwards from the Leas on the opposite side of the Esplanade, and that's looking sort of generally westwards along the Esplanade towards the Burlington Hotel, which I've annotated there. Next, please. These are views of the site again from the Esplanade, firstly looking sort of generally westwards from roughly outside the Burlington, and then sort of standing slightly closer towards the to the cliff top where there's a play area and green space. Again, the site is annotated. Next, please. These are views approaching the site from along the boulevard towards the coast. The left-hand one is looking slightly further back, and then as you approach around a roundabout, and there's the war memorial sitting in the centre with the Upchurch Court blocks as a backdrop and the site annotated. Next, please. This is looking right again from the roundabout. There's a sort of standing sort of almost opposite the war memorial, and then standing with your back towards where the war memorial is located, looking again towards the coast. Next, please. There's a view of the fronts of them. There'll be glimpse views of the development through the gap between the two properties. Next, please. This shows shows you the existing access track, which is to be upgraded. And then this is looking at the south boundary of the site towards number 12 St Nicholas Place. Next, please. This is to show you the relationship with Upchurch Court. This is the first one to the left is looking across the front, sort of southeastwards towards the site, and then on the one on the right is to show that how what the windows in the adjacent Upchurch Court flats serve. So that left-hand row of windows are kitchen windows, then where the red circles are going upwards and downwards, there are rooms to, windows to a living dining room. So next slide, please. And to help sort of get an appreciation of the relationship, I've found this plan on Rightmove. This is the flat on the first floor, which was currently for sale. That shows the layout of the general layout of those flats in the closest part of Upshur Court, with the sitting dining room on the front with two windows looking northwards, and then there's a window in the east elevation that faces towards where the building would be, and the building would sort of, if you're looking out those windows and on the front turn angle, the building would sit forward of those. And then you can see the kitchen window sort of just off to the left of the centre of that eastern elevation, east side. Next, please. Right, if we can move to the photo montages now, please. So can you open your file? These are a series of photo montages showing the site before and after that have been supplied in support of the application. This is just a plan showing where those viewpoints were taken from, but it's fairly obvious when you see them anyway. This shows a view looking down the boulevard from its junction with the Esplanade. You can see the site there on the left as existing and with the building in place. This is looking from the sort of southeastern side of the roundabout with the War Memorial off to the left. Again, the site, you can see the site there as it's existing, and then as proposed. Looking from sort of opposite side of on the western arm of the roundabout, existing, proposed. That property there is one on the Esplanade. Again, looking directly eastwards along the Esplanade from roughly outside Pauline Court, existing, proposed. And then from a view from taking near the model boating lake. So, site sits here, existing and proposed. And finally, looking westwards from the Esplanade, existing and proposed. Okay. But turning to main issues, if you can go back to presentation, please. Or may I open? Slide 32. Yeah, this is just a reminder of the main issues for consideration. Numbers 2 and 3, and to a lesser degree 4, are those that have been the main focus of the representations we've received. So turning to the recommendation, next slide, please. The proposed development is acceptable in principle, which shows an identified need. It will provide a safe access along with an appropriate level of car parking, whilst not providing affordable housing or contributions to open space. The case Y has been justified. There will be no harm to trees, protected species, or below ground heritage assets. There will be suitable arrangements for surface water drainage from the site. The two main adverse impacts of the development would be the harmful effect on the living conditions of the occupiers of the closest flats in Upshur Court, and the less than substantial harm to the significance of a designated heritage asset, in this case the Sheringham Conservation Area extension, as a result of the proposed building's appearance, scale, form and massing. However, as the council cannot currently demonstrate a 5-year supply of deliverable housing sites, the presumption in favour of sustainable development must be applied as set out on pages 32 and 33 of the agenda. The main benefits of the proposed development are also set out on page 33. It is concluded that these benefits are not outweighed by the adverse impacts I've referred to, although it is considered this is a very finely balanced recommendation. The recommendation is one for approval of the application. The amendment to the wording of the recommendation I referred to at the beginning is shown on the slide, which differs from that in the agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for a very thorough report. We now move to public speakers. Begin with the Town Council. I believe the clerk is present. Sorry, I don't know your name. So Michelle, thank you. Come to the end, please. You have 3 minutes.
Sheringham Town Council must stress that it is most keen to see the development of the proposed site, but this must be in a manner that addresses the concerns expressed to the council by residents directly or through the consultation process. On that basis, the council objects to the proposed development due to concerns about its design, impact on heritage assets, overdevelopment of the site, and legitimate concerns about parking provision. The proposed building's scale and design are out of keeping with the surrounding area. The large massing and bulky appearance would dominate the streetscape and conflict with the existing architectural character, including the nearby Sheringham Conservation Area. Despite some design amendments, the development remains incongruous, violating North Norfolk Core Strategy Policy EN4 for design, which aims to ensure that developments respect local character. The proposal also negatively impacts the Grade 2 listed war memorial and the setting of the Sheringham Conservation Area. Although the site is outside the conservation area, the development would still harm the appreciation and experience of these heritage assets, contrary to Core Strategy Policy EN8 Historic Environment, which requires development to preserve or enhance heritage assets and their setting. The density of the dwellings is excessive for the site, resulting in a building that is visually dominant and out of scale with the surrounding area. This overdevelopment would harm the local environment and residents' amenity, conflicting with the core strategy policies SS3 for housing and HO7, making the most efficient use of land, which advocate for developments that make efficient use of land while respecting their area's character. We remain of the view that the proposed 29 parking spaces are insufficient, and we believe that despite the data provided, the lack of parking would lead to overspill parking in already congested streets, exacerbating traffic issues. The access via St Nicholas Place is also inadequate for the additional traffic, contradicting Core Strategy Policy TC6 for parking provision, which mandates sufficient parking and safe access. Given these principal concerns, Sheringham Town Council objects to this development, and we ask the Planning Committee to reject the application.
Thank you. I have 2 objecting speakers. Start with Roger Kendrick Venables, please. Come to the microphone at the front. And you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. My name is Roger Venables. I'm joint owner with my wife and son of the top floor, easternmost flat in Upshur Court. And you've seen from the elevations the encroachment. But I'm not just speaking about ourselves. We actually have it least badly. The people, 3 ones below us and the 4 next to us are nearly equally affected. We've never objected to the principle of this site being developed. And we're actually quite pleased, if only they would be a little more sympathetic with their design, that it would be McCarthy Stone. However, we do have objections to many aspects of the application. And I touch on 3 today, but there are many more in our comments, most of which seem to have been ignored. You won't be surprised, having seen the montages, that we object pretty vehemently to the height It was already objected to when it was a flat roof, and the solution of adding a pitched roof at that point doesn't work. We also object to the absence at this stage of a construction and environmental management plan. Why? Because we have severe doubts about the buildability of this development. And that's not just us saying that as close neighbours, but Jean and I are both chartered civil engineers who pioneered with design and construction firms the application of formal environmental management to construction projects. And without a construction management plan, I have no confidence that they can build this development in sympathy with the neighbours. The third thing is addressing the issues just mentioned about traffic up the St Nicholas Way track. And we think you should refuse, and if they wish to reapply, you pressure them to do what I'm about to talk about, which is to put the entrance, the main entrance, on the Esplanade side, where deliveries could be made, where removal vans could be given space, so that the volume of traffic on the St Nicholas Way track dramatically reduced, conflicts reduced, and the turning of vehicles and the associated cacophony of beeping will not affect the development or Upshur Court. I'm sure many of these points apply more widely, but I hope, Chairman, it's been useful to give you a perspective from the closest adjacent flat to the extra height. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now I have a second objecting speaker, Malcolm Pedder. Please come to the microphone, please.
I am chairman of Upshur Court Residents Association Limited, which is adjacent to the proposed development and has 24 two-bedroom residents, of which 12 are permanently occupied by owner-occupiers or tenants who are in their 60s, 70s, 80s and 90s. The other half are occupied by second homeowners, and half of those are over 60, some even now 80. So 3/4 of us are well within the McCarthy Stone age frame. Our leases show plans to develop the area by building more apartments. We were quite pleased to hear that the continued development would be by McCarthy Stone, as it meant we would gain neighbours similar in age, and furthermore, we were impressed with their development at Belmaris Court. That planning application attracted 14 supportive comments and just 10 objections. No supportive comments to the District Council have been made by our residents, but 7 were troubled enough to file their own objections in addition to the objections made by us. We are therefore disappointed to see plans for what some of those residents who have objected individually have now said are overbearing or domineering, since the building is to be topped with a ridged roof. The plans have not won over our neighbours in the town, as about 63 objections have been registered, and even in the 5 comments that have been supportive, one reads words like changes need to be made and prison block with balconies, hardly support. The fact that trees will be now planted on our boundary, which is only a few feet distant from our ground floor windows, which we were initially told would be a low fence on a brick wall, does not get favoured. Remember, most of us are in our homes all day and want to see daylight. Having the trees equidistant from our windows and those of the development would be far more equitable. We are concerned that there appears to be no realistic evaluation of the traffic movement. At our AGM, we zoomed with McCarthy Stone before the plans were even submitted, and we pointed out that the need to take into account the traffic an elderly population generates. Just in the last fortnight, a 92-year-old needed an ambulance, a fire engine, a locksmith, in addition to a daily lunch delivery. We were given the impression that everyone in MCS developments is going to arrive healthy and stay healthy, so such vehicle movements need not be taken into account. Despite our ages similar to the average MCS resident, only 13% do not have a vehicle. For the development, which will be for similar age people, to assume that a 26% will not require a parking space seems inconceivable. Only last Saturday, I met a 92-year-old resident of Belmaris Court, which is the McCarthy and Stone development that's and she still drives a car and keeps it at Beaumaris Court. There will be no space on the adjacent roads for MCS residents for a car, or if there is.
3 minutes is up, I'm afraid.
Okay.
But I have to stop you there. I have two supporting speakers. Rachel Clare, I believe, is the agent. You come to the front.
Yeah.
You're ready.
Thank you. So turning to the principle of development, this site is vacant brownfield land located within the built-up area of Sheringham, which is identified as a small growth town and important local centre due to its facilities, services and transport connections. As outlined in your officer's report, the site has an extant permission for a 4-storey apartment scheme, which sets a clear precedent for the scale of development to be delivered on this site. This, in combination with the site's highly sustainable location, establishes the principle of residential development at the scale proposed. In terms of need, North Norfolk has the most severe ageing population in the country, with more than a third of the district's population made up of over 65s, and by 2038, this figure is forecast to rise to more than 40%. The latest evidence which has supported the emerging local plan, has identified a current need for more than 700 additional retirement dwellings, and that figure will rise to more than 1,000 by 2041. So it's evident there's a substantial and growing need to deliver more specialist retirement dwellings in North Norfolk. In terms of the proposals for the site specifically, the applicant's undertaken significant engagement with officers at pre-application stage and throughout the application. As a result of this extensive work, there are no technical consultative objections from highways, drainage, environmental health, ecology or landscape officers. The building's been designed to assimilate into the wider street scene along the seafront, and the materials have been carefully selected to withstand the prolonged exposure to coastal conditions associated with its seafront location and to ensure its appearance is maintained in the long term. The scheme also achieves a high standard of sustainability credentials and includes a highly efficient building fabric, air source heat pumps, solar panels, 100% electric heating, mechanical heat recovery, and EV charging available to all parking spaces. In the absence of a local 5-year housing land supply, the redevelopment of an unattractive vacant brownfield site in a highly sustainable location to deliver 41 high quality and sustainable specialist older persons homes where there is an acute shortfall of such homes holds substantial planning weight. And so I urge you to follow your officer's recommendation to approve the application.
Thank you. And second supporting speaker, David Prescott. Yeah, come to the microphone, please.
I'm almost not sure why I'm here, because I'm not come here to recommend or go against. I'm simply a resident of Beaumaris Court, and I've been asked to come along to simply give my history, which is very short for this, and hope I'm saying the right thing. Basically, my wife, we lived in Beeston Regis, my wife and I, and she approached me with a leaflet some few years, 8-9 years ago. She thinks due to her failing health, etc., we might like to go for one of those. I fought it for a bit because I like my garden and vegetable patch and everything else, but eventually succumbed to what was right. And we moved eventually into an apartment at Beaumaris Court. And we had 2 lovely years, and she has since collapsed very much further and is now in Sun Court nursing home, and she's not coming out. So my personal is that I can just get to see her every day. All I'm saying is that I've been very happy there. It works for me. I think it works for nearly all my neighbours. Very friendly social scene. what more can I say? I'm here just to say how I've enjoyed being in a retirement home situation such as McCarthy Stone. Can I go?
Yes. may
Thank you.
return to your seat, Thank you.
I hope that's enough.
That's fine, thank you. Local member, councillor Withington. You can speak from there, just make sure you put your microphone on, please.
So I'm going to rush through, so
Yeah.
apologies for the speed.
Your 5 minutes will be timed.
I know.
Long agenda today.
I would expect nothing less. Right, okay. So while the community acknowledges the principle of development on this site, there is a deep concern regarding the scale and impact of the proposed 41 apartment scheme. The original permission for 24 homes was already a significant development, but this revised proposal substantially increases density, mass and height, 3.5 metres, in a way that is out of character with the surrounding area. Despite the developers' welcome engagement and amendments, the fundamental issues regarding scale, form, massing and character remain unresolved. Community feels that the proposal does not respond adequately to its context and instead resembles an urban environment inconsistent with one of North Norfolk's premier coastal towns' character. Core strategy policies EN2, 4 and 8 are not being met in the eyes of the community. While poor planning decisions may have been made in the past, particularly in the 1970s and 80s, this should not set a precedent for further inappropriate development. NNDC policies require new developments not only to match but enhance the local area. Given the site's proximity to the conservation area and conservation area extension, careful and appropriate design is essential. Many residents have pointed out that McCarthy and Stone is capable of delivering designs more in keeping with local character, as demonstrated in their South Street scheme. This proposal does not, in their view, reflect the same level of contextual sensitivity. Density of the development is a key concern. National Land Efficiency Guidelines work at 40 dwellings per hectare, and yet this proposal is an extreme 157, nearly 4 times the minimum level. This excessive density is reflected in the unbroken 28-metre long ridge and continuous mass of brickwork, despite the small indentations, which looms over the pavement edge without meaningful modulation to break up its bulk. A major concern is the loss of the iconic view from the War Memorial to Marble Arch, a well-loved and historic entry point to Sheringham's beaches. The proposal's 3-metre height increase over Upcher Court and the previous scheme, along with the building line up to the edge of the pavement, will dominate the skyline, fundamentally altering a view embedded in the lives of both locals and visitors for over 45 years. You can see the pictures on the screen. Although the Grand Hotel once stood on this site, it was set further back and contributed positively to the area's architectural character. This proposal does not attempt to echo that grandeur, but instead presents an overbearing and unsympathetic mass. The proposed parking allocations of 0.5 spaces per unit is based on urban assumptions that do not, we feel, apply to North Norfolk. In rural and coastal areas, as we have heard, elderly residents often continue driving to maintain independence, and there is a reliance on care providers relying on vehicles for home visits. The lack of sufficient parking will place further strain on an already congested area. Local residents on St Nicholas's Place and Links Road are already in discussion with Highways about the need for double yellow lines to maintain access for residents and emergency service and waste vehicles. The entrance, as we saw in the presentation to St Nicholas Place, is also problematic. It is very tight, and with cars parked up to it, the splays, the visuals, the visibility splays and turning circles make it very difficult accessing that area. We don't believe that this is appropriate and is inadequate due to local parking pressures conflicting with policy CT5. You can see pictures further along of those. The pedestrian access are welcome on the boulevard area, however, on the esplanade. However, it is unfeasible for them to be drop-off points here, as the later photographs will show, that even on an early Monday in March, there is very little car parking spacing available, as it is used both by town and visitors. So the mass and density of the proposal will have a serious impact on Upshur Court residents, particularly on its eastern end, as windows and outdoor spaces currently benefit from morning sunlight. This will be significantly reduced, affecting residents' quality of life. Additionally, proposed tree planting on the southern boundary may further impact natural light levels of Upshur Court, adding to the concerns of overshadowing and loss of amenity. It also seems unfair that planning contributions are not coming on here, especially given the clear acknowledgement that the future residents will rely on the Lees Gardens and War Memorial as their primary green space. These areas require investment, and this funding would have been extremely beneficial to their maintenance improvement, not only for residents, but also for the town, who will be providing the infrastructure for these residents' lives. I am missing some of these bits out, and I've got there.
Okay, thank you. We'll now move into questions and debate. Could I ask members to stick with standing orders, that you speak only once, given otherwise we could be here till 3 in the afternoon. Sure you don't want that. Long meetings tend to lead to poor decision making. Who wishes to start? Okay, Councillor Fisher first.
Just a question, and I'm not doubting Councillor Withington's words. What height does the extant building have compared to this one that's proposed? I think Councillor Withington said there was a 3 metre height increase, but I'd just like to know that, please.
It's estimated it'd be approximately 2.5 metres higher. It's based on the drawings that submitted. You can't really scale off the drawings that we have on file for the 1977 scheme, because they're sort of microfiches of the original plans. So it's an estimate, but I wouldn't. It could be more. It could be less, but not much either way. I wouldn't have thought. So around 2.5 metres. Thank you.
No, I think I'm fine with that. That's obviously a little bit in the ether, but yeah, it's a similar on something like that as a scale. The difference is not that great.
Would it help if we put the slide that we're showing
yes,
the streets in? Yep. PowerPoint showing the slide. Yeah, that's the slide I was talking about, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Beattie.
Just a query, really. I listened to the objector and he said there was no construction management plan. Is that correct?
As it currently stands, but that would be required through a condition if permission was granted. It's one of the recommended conditions in the list.
If that was the case, then will the residents of the building next door be consulted in that school?
There wouldn't be consulted formally on an application for approval of details. No.
No, on page 34, Councillor, is a long list of suggested conditions. So that would be included within that. Thank you. Councillor Kim Toyne.
Thank you. Right, firstly, I'd like to say that I think this is an attractive development that's far better than seeing a rough piece of land that's been empty for many years and unused. There's always been plans to build on this site, and I see this as a visual improvement, plus providing additional homes for those that are looking for alternative living space when reaching a certain age. And I say that very sympathetically. I'm now 65, so, you know, another sort of few years I might be looking at the same. Well, I suppose I could call it negative comments is regarding the amount of parking spaces. That worries me a bit. I would question as to whether that is enough, because otherwise it will result in parking issues. Sheringham is not an easy place to find parking, and when you've got visitors coming, it's really, I avoid places like that. Also, the number of planned units, it's another floor higher than the flat complex next door. I think it's a little bit too much and overwhelming for those living around. I do understand that there is a need for this type of residence, but this should not be achieved by cramming as many people into this space as possible. This is Sheringham, it's not a city, it's not London, and we should remember this. I would like to ask or propose that McCarthy Stone look at reducing the amount of units and building an area that people can live in and not just sit in and look out the window. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Watson.
Yeah, just to clarify, the Upshur Court flats are 4 stories, but the top floor is contained within the mansard roof space. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, yes. Basil, I think.
Okay, I've got an observation and some questions. Have you got your pencils ready? Because I'm only allowed one bite at the cherry. My observation, it's monumental. I mean, we've got 90 miles of coastline in Norfolk, and this is huge. And whatever was proposed before doesn't mitigate the fact that this is much, much larger than it's larger than its neighbours, and it is hugely impactful on the coastline. So my questions are, what is the evidence that these are going to be retirement dwellings, apart from the fact there's an age limit of 60, which is 10 years younger than me, so I regard that as very young. I mean, there's one lift, is that correct? Is there any other support for the people as they get older? So that's one question. What's going to prevent 50% of these becoming second homes, as with Upshur Court? I don't see anything about that. We've got half the parking equivalently of Upshur Court, so I think that is a real problem as well. I think it's a real issue. There's no affordability there. I don't see. These aren't really questions, actually. They're questions and statements together. What about the health contribution? You've got 60, 70 people coming in at over 60 with all their health conditions into a fragile health ecosystem, but I don't see any health contribution there. And I think that's it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Which one of these taken?
Yeah, well, yeah, obviously your comments about the sort of scale of the event have been made by others. Whether or not one lift is sufficient, that's merely a matter for building control and for the operation of the development. Oh, sorry. Yeah, but I mean, if the chair feels it appropriate, we can ask that question of the agent. There's nothing to prevent them being second homes. I did raise this with the agent, but it's highly unlikely given the service charges and things that are applied and the costs. Yeah.
What about the second home council tax premium? Does that not make a service charge look quite attractive?
Well, all I would just observe, as the buck has passed my way, isn't it, there, is that any residents here would need to pay the council tax at whatever rate is set by this authority. If there is a second home premium, as is the plan, and that was pertinent to their unit, then they would be buying them in light of that position.
Thanks. And then the agent said this is using these as second homes is not a particular problems in their developments and other coastal areas. In terms of the parking, that's been justified with evidence based on the developers, other development, a sample of other developments around the country, and it's comparable to it's comparable, if not slightly more than the applicant's developments at the development down the road on Holt Road, and also at Beaumaris Court. And the health contribution, I believe this is below the trigger where we consult the highway authority, the health authority, isn't it, Jeff? 50 is the trigger for requesting contributions towards health facilities. Thank you.
Yes, it might be within the legal requirements, but I tend to agree with you, Councillor Holiday, that no, there will be excess demands on the health facilities in the area. Councillor John Toy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I think most of the relevant points have been raised. I wanted to come with my Armed Forces champion hat on with the War Memorial there. That clearly is going to be quite large behind the War Memorial, and when most of these events go on, it's in the winter, November. Without deciding where we finish up with the vote on this, I don't know if it's anything we can condition, but what I would like to consider is if this goes ahead, that during the construction phase, during that winter period, that some sort of screening was dropped over scaffolding to make it more pleasant, because I know that the parade comes down towards the War Memorial and that would be the backdrop. I just think as Armed Forces champion, I should, and considering the age of the people that are going to be there and how that may be relevant to them, that should be considered certainly in the construction phase. So with the plan that's been spoken about, should it go ahead, and I'd like members to consider that large red backdrop and how that fits against the War Memorial in this case. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hankins.
Thank you, Chairman. Could we look again at the parking and the access consideration? That's been raised in the report, that the access is limited and the parking is limited. Could we just look again at the access, please?
The slide you're referring to, Councillor Hankin.
Sorry?
Is that the slide? Is that the slide you're referring
Yes,
to, or
yes,
you want the
sure,
photograph?
sure. So
Okay, thank you.
that's the number of parking spaces, and the access is the access from St Nicholas Place. Yeah, that's the only access. Is that a two-way access?
It will be widened to enable two vehicles to pass within it. Yes.
Okay. Does the car parking provision, is that within standards?
It's below the standard for a dwelling, but the policy CT6 does allow for variation to that where it's appropriately justified, and we feel officers feel on the basis of the evidence from the developers sample of developments they've used to justify the parking demand, and on what we've permitted on schemes in a similar location, as I referred to when I answered Councillor Holiday's question, Beaumaris Court and Justice Court, just down the road here. That level of parking is considered to be sufficient, and the Highway Authority have not raised any objections on either highway safety grounds or parking grounds. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor MacDonald and Councillor Vickers.
Thank you. Looking at that slide, so the garages are going to be demolished. So that white area above the car parking, what is that going to be? How do the cars get into the car parking spaces on the left? Do you see what I mean? So the car parking spaces on the right, you can see where the cars go in and reverse into the spaces, but the car parking spaces on the far left, how do the cars get into that space?
These are garage.
There's a garage
garage
below
block,
there.
the
Below
garage block serving up to court.
yeah, below where the cursor was there.
Sorry.
Below where the cursor was.
There.
There's, yeah, how do they get into that bit?
Okay.
That's part, that white bit there is part of the car park, is it?
A part of the sort of manoeuvring.
I just,
space.
from the colour,
Yeah.
it's not included in the greyish colour, it's white.
Yeah.
So I assumed that was not going to be part of it.
It's not within the application. It's not within the
So
application.
how do the car, do you see what I mean? How
Yes,
do
I
the
see.
cars get into that bit?
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Did it helicopter in? I mean,
It's a shared sort of shared area.
so that's going to be a car park space, although it's white.
No.
Not a manoeuvring space, if you know what I mean.
So they're the car parking space. They're the car
Yeah, is
parking
it-
spaces there.
Yeah.
That's a shared.
Oh, so they can drive in that bit. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
That's, they're blocks of garages that currently
Thanks
attached to the
thanks for the
Orchard Court
explanation.
flat. Sorry for the confusion.
Could you just clarify a further point on that? That is not within, that's access to those parking spaces is not within the area outlined in red. What rights would the McCarthy and Stone residents have over the land which presumably is not owned by McCarthy and Stone?
Well, presumably they have rights of access over it, but it might be worth asking the agent to clarify that.
Yeah, could you come to the front, please? That's why it's recorded for the. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, just to clarify, obviously the bits in white is because it's all existing, so it's not being changed. Obviously, the coloured bits is what falls in with it in the application boundary. Obviously, in terms of rights, it's a legal issue, not a planning issue. I would clarify that. But in terms of obviously, it's a shared access going in, and McCarthy Stone have got rights of access for the development.
Okay. Yeah, just one, come to you in a moment. Just one other point. What, is there a legal agreement in place already for these, for access to those spaces?
Well, in terms of McCarthy Stone, have obviously got a legal position on the site, so that would encompass the access rights as well for the development.
Okay, I understand it's a legal issue, but it is a consideration regardless. Thank you. Yes, sir. I'll allow you very briefly to come to the front, please. If you just want, I assume you want to respond to that particular thing.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I should have mentioned really declaring an interest that I'm also a director of the Residents Association, but I was responding earlier as a leaseholder. A clarification, the track that comes from St Nicholas Way, which is going to be widened, in an arrangement which is not a planning issue, but it's relevant, in an arrangement before the planning application was submitted, that became our association became the freeholder of Upshur Court, including that track and the land coloured white on which we have our garages. And the arrangement is that McCarthy Stone, I think, have coloured that track because they have agreed to rebuild it. And then we will share the maintenance costs going forward. And so that access track is not just for the proposed development, it's also for the existing 24 Upshur Court apartments. And that's part of our concern about that track, why I suggested that the ground floor be turned around and the entrance be in the esplanade, in order that that track is not having to cope with all of the 31 all the time, alongside the requirement you heard from Malcolm about one resident needing a fire engine,
Okay, I think we're clear on
So,
that.
so
Could
it's,
I-
it's dealt with in a legal agreement.
Could I stop you there, please? Because I wouldn't normally allow the original speaker to come back, but
I thought that would be helpful
point to clarify. You said you're a director of the Resident Association, who actually own this, the freehold of this land. Is there an agreement with McCarthy and Stone regarding the manoeuvring area? Or will that?
We do have an agreement that they have when the thing is completed, the residents will have access up that track alongside ourselves. And if you like, part of the arrangement is that they will redevelop that track. But something I forgot to mention in my presentation earlier, they have agreed that no construction traffic will come up that lane.
Right, that's another useful point. Thank you.
Okay.
Are you satisfied, Councillor MacDonald?
The white bit, not the track, I was asking, right? I was asking-
Yeah, it seems to me that has been answered. Councillor Vickers and Councillor Netherway.
Thank you, Chairman. I noticed that our own North Norfolk District Council Conservation Team have made quite a strongly worded objection to this. And on the photo montage, the westward view down, I think the Esplanade, the building rather dominated the other buildings. And forgive me, but I don't think the other buildings are of particular note or beauty, but it did seem particularly dominant. That's all I wanted to say, really.
Yes, do we have conservation views?
I mean, that was quite an important part of our concerns, is the scale would dominate that part of the conservation area.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to pick up a little bit on what Councillor Holliday said about the question of health contributions, and I'd like to know a bit more. Could someone explain to me the S106 situation on this application, please?
It's developer contributions were requested, but the financial viability appraisal was submitted by the applicant. The council's independent assessor has looked at that, and they've concluded, I'll tell you what they say, based on their review and assessment of the submitted information and the viability appraisal, in their opinion, that is the opinion of the council's consultant, the applicants have made the case in justification that the proposed development is unable to support the delivery of affordable housing or other Section 106 contributions. They are making the contribution towards the GI RAMS tariff, which is necessary to accord with the habitats regulations, and they have also agreed to make that contribution to libraries that are referred to at the beginning of the presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, after following that, it does seem curious to me that S106 basically amounts to about £17,000 in a fire hydrant for a very large and no doubt profitable development. So again, I share your concerns over the viability assessment, but it has been looked at by our independent assessor, so difficult to argue with, I'm afraid.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make a few reflections, then possibly unhelpfully, but I think I need to raise it. I'm going to raise the issue again of that parking area that Councillor MacDonald started off talking about, and the white area above the half dozen or however many parking spaces it was off to the side there. But if we go back to basics here, this application is before committee today because I called it in pretty much as soon as it arrived. I didn't do that with, at the time, any view as to whether it should be approved or refused. It was purely related to the scale of the proposal and the prominence of the site. Equally, I think it is probably without doubt that it is a suitable site to be developed for housing. Okay? Nobody here today from any perspective has debated that. Thereafter, there are two elements of policy that are particularly relevant to the determination of this application, in my view. One, and probably bluntly I'd put this second, is the list of policies that are on page 19 of your report, which includes the relevant headings of the adopted core strategy policies, a number of which were referred to, particularly in the speech by the clerk from the Town Council and Councillor Withington. Secondly, though, is the National Planning Policy Framework, paragraph 11D, which I would particularly draw councillors' attention to, which is at the top of page 33 of your report today. And I'm going to over-labour this and read that bit out, but for wider benefit, National Planning Policy Framework is a government document. It effectively sets the government's position on planning policy and on development management decisions. It's an important material consideration that this council, this committee has to have regard to before coming to a conclusion on any application. And we do have a particular challenge in North Norfolk. We're not alone in this. As Mr. Watson said earlier, we do not currently have a recognised 5-year housing land supply. So something called paragraph 11D of that document becomes relevant. And effectively, little 1 and little 2 Roman numerals at the top of that page are a direct quote of that policy. So we should, as a council, be granting planning permission for this sort of thing, unless one of 2 things is in place. The first one is little Roman numeral 1. So the application of policies in this NPPF that protect areas or assets of particular importance, and in this instance, it's the proximity to the listed war memorial and the proximity to the conservation area that are relevant, provides a strong reason for refusing the development proposal. So you could decide that is relevant, that the less than substantial harm that the council's conservation team feel this proposal has to both of those assets is a strong reason for refusal. My personal view is I think we would struggle to defend that position on appeal. It might be a clear reason. Those are the words of the previous government's alternative to this phrase, but personally, I don't see it as a strong reason. I'll then move on because it is an or anything within little Roman numerals 2, which says any adverse impacts of doing so, of granting permission, would significantly outweigh, significantly and demonstrably outweigh, any adverse impacts of the development would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits when assessed against policies in the NPPF as a whole, having particular regard, and this is the important bit, to policies for directing development to sustainable locations. Again, personal view, this is quite clearly a sustainable location. It's in the heart of one of our principal settlements. Making effective use of land. Again, come back to my first point. I don't think anybody's really debating the residential principle of this. So it's making effective use of land, securing well-designed places. Now, to me, that is the one phrase here that has, people have used different words, but we've come back to on a number of times. So is the scale and massing of this development resulting in a well-designed place? And then there might be a component within the scale and massing, which personally I think are the key issues here. It is the design. Okay, personally I think it's more about the scale and the massing is what you're due to consider. And then it finishes and providing affordable homes individually or in combination. And whilst there can be some scepticism about the planning gain package, and indeed that's been put across by a number of people today, as Mr. Watson has said, as the report says, we've had this independently looked at and our viability assessor has concluded this development doesn't result in a requirement viability wise for more. So to me, if councillors are minded to refuse this, bearing in mind the recommendation is for approval, then you need to be able to demonstrate which bits of that paragraph of the NPPF you're refusing it for. The awkward bit, and it's clearly your decision on that point. The awkward bit is I'm now going to tell you, and I've been doing this job a while, and I've been doing this sort of job a while, well, decades now, and I don't think I've ever done this before. And I have agreed this with Miss Croxon as the council's legal solicitor and with Mr. Lyon, the development manager. I don't actually think you are in a position where it would be safe for you to approve this today. Okay, and that is for the simple reason, and I have listened very carefully to what everybody has said. I don't feel, and I'm going to come back to our constitution at the end of this, I don't feel that I have the confidence from what has been said that McCarthy and Stone have the rights and possibly the documentation within the application in relation to the access to those parking spaces off to the left, which I think are an important part of the scheme, because if they don't have the rights to access them, therefore we can't assume they can be accessed, therefore there's X% less parking on a number that is already marginal. Okay, so under our constitution, sorry, I'm just going to find the wording. My computer's gone to sleep because I've waffled on for too long. I do have the ability, let me just quote it to you. Oops. On page 74 of the constitution, when the committee make a decision, in my view, that would fail to observe the proper principles of planning decisions, and I'm not comfortable here with you potentially approving it. But if you wanted to, I would be telling you that your resolution has to be that you're minded to approve it, with it formally deferred to the next meeting, at which point I would report back on these issues to you. Okay, so you do have the opportunity to refuse the application today. You do have the opportunity to minded to approve today, but effectively to defer, or alternatively, you could just defer it without a direction of travel. Hopefully the chair got that, because I haven't had the chance to brief him in advance. I did take the view this didn't require a deferral to leave the room for 10 minutes whilst I explain all that separately. But if you're minded to refuse it, that is not the recommendation of your officers. Okay, but you would need to be clear as to how it ties in with that paragraph that I've quoted of the NPPF. End of statement.
Thank you for that curveball. I'm looking at the decision-making protocol in front of me, and it would appear that Mr. Croxon will advise that I can take a proposal to defer at this point without going into any further detail, on the basis that further negotiations and clarification need to be sought regarding the issues that Officer Williams has raised. That would be okay to do that. Okay, could I have a proposal to defer? Thank you. And a second. That's another way. Okay. Could we have the usual recorded vote, please?
Councillor Beattie,
For.
Councillor Boyle, Councillor Brown,
For.
Councillor Fisher, Councillor Fitz-Tillett, for Councillor Hankins, Councillor Heinrich,
For.
Councillor Holiday, Councillor MacDonald,
For.
Councillor Mancy Boyle, Councillor Netherway, Councillor J Toy,
For.
Councillor K Toy,
For.
and Councillor Vickers.
For.
Thank you. The application is deferred on the basis as put forward by Officer Williams. Thank you. Right, 10 to 11. We'll take 10 minutes now, I think, before we get into the next one, which will be equally long, I expect. Thank you.
That lucky fact is otherwise then we don't.
Yeah.
That was why. This guy got completely investigated.
The first question is what you need to know. Yellow. We now I can understand you. So I got a lot of something. Be very weird, but that I was.
Yeah. The site is extremely challenging.
Where I am.
There's a process.
Yeah,
I would have liked to have opportunity to explain it, but hard to go into detail.
If I was.
No, I'm always desperate to answer the question. Also, also a lot closer to the science.
I just don't know how we're going to get.
Yeah, we've done an intrusive site investigation, yeah. Yeah.
Was you? Well, now it's true. No. So it's brilliant.
Right, I'm told we're now live on YouTube again, so we can move on. Item 9, High Kelling, PF/24/1892. Mr. Brands, please.
Yep, thank you. Just to give an update, circulation went round, I think yesterday, but we've received updated comments from Highways. So as such, the recommendation is also been updated to recommend approval, subject to section 106 and conditions, including those recommended by the Highways officer. So the application is for the change of use of an existing care home to form 35 dwellings with associated landscaping, bicycle storage, refuse and recycling storage at Cromer Road in High Kelling. Next slide, please. So this is the site location plan and aerial, sort of located within a wooded area protected by a TPO. Within the red line area sort of covers an area of 1.23 hectares, located to the south of Cromer Road, and there are public rights of way to the east and west of the site, which connects further south in the woodland plantation. So this is the proposed site plan. So there'll be a proposed pedestrian path connecting to the north to have separate pedestrian access from existing vehicle access to the site. So it comprises 4 distinct parts. So block A to the west comprises a former classroom and physiotherapy room. Block B is in the centre and is the main and oldest part of the site, comprising a large 2.5-storey block. Block C to the west is the newest part, U-shaped block, single storey with 12 former assisted living units. And block D on the north is an ancillary block that was a plant storage and laundry block. So these are just some of the existing floor plans of the blocks. So currently blocks A and B are connected with a corridor. And this is the proposed first floor plans. There's a first floor over the physiotherapy room and also first floor of the main block B. The next slide shows the proposed ground floor plan across the site. So I say the notable differences are just removal of the connecting corridor between blocks A and B, and also sort of significant landscaping alterations and enhancements around the site and additional parking provision. And the next slide just shows the first floor configuration as well of blocks A and B. The next slide shows the existing and proposed roof plans. Again, the main difference is the removal of the linking corridor between blocks A and B. And the next slide shows the existing elevations of block B. So this is the main block. So the proposal here is to convert this into 18 units. Next slide, please. And these are the proposed elevations. So the main differences are the fenestration alterations and also a modest first floor infill extension to bring it into line with the ground floor level. So the overall character and form of the buildings would be retained. Next slide. So these are the existing elevations on top and proposed elevations below of block A of the physiotherapy room and former classroom. And the next slide shows block C, the existing elevations on the left and proposed on the right. Again, this would remain to form 12 residential units. And this shows the block D. So this would remain sort of as an ancillary block to serve the developments, sort of where the refuse and plant storage bits would be. And the next slide shows some of the open space areas proposed on site. The top sort of image or photo montage shows the western play area, sort of comprising a sort of climbing frames, swing and sort of meadow area. The central part would be a sort of a middle Eastern Grove garden around the 12 units, comprising a swale, mound slide and play swale. And the bottom photo sort of shows a more informal play area in the southern meadow. So these are some of the photos around the site. So this is a view towards Block A, comprising the former classroom and the physiotherapy room. And these are some of the buildings of the main block, Block B. I say it's been dilapidated and out of use for a number of years. And I say in the top right, the proposed first floor infill will be on that first floor level to bring that into line with the ground floor projection currently there in the top right photo. And the next slide shows the same block from the rear, from the south of the site towards the towards the main building again. And the next slide shows the Block C. This is the 12 units, former assisted care living. This will be 12 residential units as part of that redevelopment. And the next slide shows Block D, which would remain an ancillary block, and also a view towards the entrance of the site up the private lane. And the next slide shows where an existing substation is. That's where the proposed new pedestrian path would come out of, and part of the highway improvement would be sort of connecting that towards the existing bus stop on the south side of Cromer Road. And around the site, so you've got a public right of way that connects further south, and that's just a view of the path going past on the west of the site. So as I say on the report, sort of the main issues are whether the proposed development is acceptable in principle, including the loss of the care provision and the absence of affordable housing. As commented in the report, let's say a viability assessment has been undertaken, and as the external consultant is satisfied that it's not possible to provide affordable housing as part of the proposals, and also I say acceptable from a highway safety perspective, where following the comments from the highway officer, we are now satisfied that there isn't a highway safety concern regarding the vehicular movements, and I say that's been addressed. So the recommendation is to approve subject to section 106 and imposition of conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, we have no town or parish speaker, have no objecting speaker, have one supporting speaker, Joe Haynes, I believe is the agent. To the front, please, you'll have your 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Joe Haynes. I'm a planning consultant and I'm the agent for the application on behalf of the applicant here today. I'd like to thank officers for their time and advice through lengthy pre-application discussions and during the course of the application. And I'd also like to thank members for their time here today. It looks like you've got a lot of work to do. This proposal will bring back into use a property that has been vacant for more than 7 years. I think we saw in those photographs, it's fairly dilapidated now. It will provide 35 new homes in the existing buildings with a mix of dwelling sizes, significant landscape and biodiversity improvements, including a biodiversity net gain of more than 40%. The applicant has engaged with the council through pre-application in 2021 and 2023. We have had face-to-face meetings with the owners of Pine Heath Cottage and Thornley, the two properties adjacent to the site. And we have provided the pre-application proposals to the parish council well in advance of submission of the application, and have noted and responded to their comments on the application. Very importantly, we have carefully considered how the development will impact on the local highway, and we have liaised closely with the County Council Highways officers to minimise and mitigate those impacts, and are very pleased that this has resulted in their support. We are committed to making contributions towards local open spaces, library funds, nearby sites of nature conservation, and improvements to form a crossing point across the Cromer Road, and have been in discussion with planning officers about appropriate conditions should planning permission be granted. Your officers have recommended approval of the application, and respectfully, I ask that you take their advice and vote in favour of the proposed development. Thank you.
Thank you. No local member shown as speaking. Is it part of your ward, Councillor Beattie? Right, go ahead, please.
Basically, I agree with High Kelm Parish Council. There's a significant problem with access onto that site and egress from that site. It's not good. Highways may say they think it's acceptable. If you actually go to the site and try and get out of the site, it's just about impossibility. As far as anybody on foot, you can forget it, because any time when it's busy, you're just not going to be able to cross that road. And so unless they're going to put a crossing in of some description or a safety area in the middle of it, you're just not going to get across the road. That's awful. I mean, I've seen it personally firsthand, and it's not good. It's just it's crazy. Trying putting 35 extra vehicles in that area. I think, well, minimum of 35 extra vehicles. It's not gonna work. I can understand why I can want to object to it, and that's about it.
Could I ask whether you would consider yourself predetermined? Okay, therefore you will be abstaining. Thank you. We have a statement from a neighbouring ward member, which will be read out by Officer Lyon.
Yeah, so the statement here is, you were pleased to hear, it's just one side of A4. It's from Councillor Callum Ringer. He's not able to attend today. He says, I'm speaking on behalf of Bodham Parish Council as its chair and as the adjacent ward member. He says it's very adjacent as the site boundary is the parish and ward boundary. He says, I would like to outline my serious concerns regarding this application. To be clear, neither I nor Bodham Parish Council are opposed to appropriate development on this site. However, he says what is currently proposed is simply unacceptable. He says the developers are proposing no affordable housing whatsoever, neither on site nor through financial contributions. He says this is an outrage. There is a well-documented local need for affordable homes, yet this application completely disregards that need. This appears to directly contradict NNDC policy HO3. And he says, without any contribution to affordable housing, this development will neither be acceptable. If this committee is to support sustainable communities, then it cannot support an application that fails to provide homes for local people. It then goes on to say, in addition to housing concerns, I must also highlight the impact on local infrastructure, particularly the A148. He says this road is already under considerable pressure and communities along its length are working hard to improve highway safety. High Kelling is an especially dangerous area for all road users, particularly pedestrians. He says the absence of a safe crossing here is a serious concern. I believe that the speed limits between High Kelling and Bodham should be reduced to 50 miles per hour, alongside the introduction of a double white no overtaking lines. He says implementing these measures would be costly, and I believe the developer should contribute towards these measures. To the applicant, he says, work with us, not against us. He then goes on to say that the site in question is also very close to Bodham's parish boundary and Bodham Common, an important open space. He says, I have concerns about access from the development to the common and believe that only the existing footpath access should remain, with no additional access points created. However, he says, I acknowledge that Bodham Common is a popular location for dog walking, and it is highly likely that new residents will use it. For this reason, he says, I believe it is reasonable for the developer and any future management company to provide a public dog waste bin and commit to its funding. Then he goes on to talk about, and its ongoing collection from waste from there. He then says this should be located in agreement with Bodham Parish Council and NNDC Environmental Services. Additionally, discussions are underway about the future management of the common, and a financial contribution from the developer towards its environmental upkeep would be welcome. Any such contribution could be designated specifically for the maintenance and environmental enhancements of Bodham Common. Final paragraph, he says, to conclude, while I'm not opposed to development on this site, I do not believe that the current proposal is the right one. He says it fails to provide much needed affordable housing, it does not address critical highway safety concerns, and does not contribute sufficiently to the surrounding environment and community. He says, I ask the applicant to reconsider and bring forward a revised proposal that better serves local residents. We have a responsibility to get this right for our communities. That's a statement from Councillor Callum Ringer. Thank you.
Thank you. A number of issues for your consideration, members. We do have a Highways officer present to deal with those matters, and you've all seen we had the letter from County Highways setting out their requirements. So we're all clear on that. Those will go in conditions.
Make an observation.
Yeah.
So just an observation, obviously Darren is here from the Highway Authority. So the plans that are before you have visibility displays of 43 metres either side of the junction access. Now, as officers, we've come to a view on that we felt, okay, well, there's an existing access, an existing proposal, this would generate fewer traffic numbers. So therefore, requiring a higher standard of visibility is going to be a hard one to justify when we're talking about an existing building and an existing use. Now, the Highway Authority have asked for a 59 metre visibility display, which currently we don't have evidence to show that that could be achievable on the site. So if you did insist on a higher requirement for a visibility display, it may not technically be achievable, and we could be in a difficult position in terms of if the applicant decides to appeal that condition, we'd have to justify why we would be asking for that display. So in coming to the balanced judgment, officers have taken that into account, but we're broadly content with a 43 metre visibility. But of course, that judgment is yours as a committee, whether you would want to consider that an acceptable compromise. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
I just want to give, well, a couple of points arise from this. One is on viability and affordable housing. The other one is on highways. I'll deal with affordable housing first. It won't have escaped the attention of members this morning that this is the second application before us where affordable housing has been challenged and has been found inappropriate on both applications when put to our viability consultant. Now, there is widespread belief in the community that it is this council that puts developers in that position of not having to provide affordable housing. That is definitely not the case. This is national legislation playing into the viability process and is handcuffing our discretion as a committee to impose affordable housing on many schemes that come before us, and we've had two this morning. So I just want to make that point, and it makes it extremely difficult, and it's unwise to reject an application because the refusal will be overturned on appeal if we are arguing for affordable housing when a viability assessment says it's not necessary or not justifiable, perhaps is a better term. So I just want to make that point. Now, both Councillor Ringer, Councillor Beattie and myself, moving to the highways issue, attended a public meeting on the 18th of February following a fatal accident in which two elderly residents lost their lives on this stretch of road very close to this application site over Christmas, causing real concern about the highway safety of this particular stretch of the A148. So I would say we need to apply the highest standards. And for me, a 43-metre visibility display against a 59 is not a contest on this stretch of road. We need a maximum visibility display. I thank the highways officer for his clarity in the letter that we received this week. I do hope that those conditions will be, if approved today, will be obviously implemented as part of granting the consent. I also would urge people to make it a condition that there is a contribution towards some sort of crossing. We know that the county council highways budget is under great pressure, and I've argued, and I did argue at the meeting on the 18th of February, that there should be some scope for Section 106 contributions from developers in tandem with any investment by the county council from their highways budget. So I would certainly urge that to take place here. We do need to repurpose buildings. We do need to support conversions. This will undoubtedly contribute to our, 5-year housing supply numbers. And in view of the lack of our 5-year land supply at the moment, due to largely to circumstances beyond our control, the tilted balance, I think, dictates that we should be putting maximum conditions to make the best of this site conversion, but we should be seeking or looking to, with these safeguards that I've mentioned on highway safety, we should be looking to approve this application, and therefore I will propose that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, but that would be with the conditioning that the highways requirements.
Yes,
are
to
accepted.
speak to Officer Lyons's point, if the committee are thinking of 43 metres, I wouldn't be able to support it. It is subject to that maximum visibility display. It's that important on that stretch of road.
Okay. Could we ask the agent to come back to the front, please, so we can just clarify a couple of issues? Right, basically, officers have asked you to see whether, from the applicant, you as the applicant's agent, whether the requirements as specified by highways are actually achievable as opposed to the original 43-metre display. Or maybe you're not able to answer that.
I'm not able to answer that. We know that the visibility displays that have been shown on the drawings are achievable. We also know that they're in line with manual for streets. It's a 30-mile-an-hour zone on that road there. Whether people drive faster than that, I can't control that. The applicant can't control that. But that's the speed limit, and that's why manual for streets. And that visibility display is the appropriate visibility display.
Okay, thank you. Could I ask highways to comment?
Yeah. Wrong one. The speed limit is just the posted speed limit. Obviously, we need to assess visibility requirements in terms of what traffic is actually travelling at, and we would assess 85% of the moving vehicles to get the target speed that we'd be looking at. So, looking at the frontage, looking at the highway verges, I think that the 59 metres is reasonable and should be able to be provided. Certainly close to that extent, I would say, without any difficulties. So that's obviously the reason why we asked for it. History has given us an odd situation on this road where we've balanced between design manual for roads and bridges requirements and manual for streets requirements. But obviously, it being a 30, it's a bit of a balancing act. So we've accepted the MFS one in this instance, and we'll be looking to secure that visibility. Thanks.
Again, just on the issue of a crossing, Just for you, I think members might find it useful to indicate what a typical light crossing would cost, whether it's just
I
flashing
think
yellows or.
the crossing
what
is
you
an
like.
interesting one because of the width of the road. We would need further assessment, safety advice as to whether it's actually feasible to get a crossing into the space that's available. So it might be possible, but it's something that needs further investigation.
Thank you. Okay, I've got Councillor Holiday next.
Thank you. Couple of points. I think the crossing is more important than the actual splay myself, because I drive this very frequently and this road is rammed. I don't know if you've got the number of the vehicle movements on it, but it's absolutely, it's, you know, peak times. It's very busy. I'm questioning why you suddenly decreased the number of traffic movements. I mean, we've got 35 houses and lots of children on playgrounds jumping around who need to get to school. I mean, you say there are going to be 12 vehicle movements in the peak rush hour time slot. I mean, how are they going to get to school? Because they're not going to cycle along that road because the pavement's unsafe, the road's unsafe. And so I don't quite understand how the traffic movement suddenly decreased. That's one question. The other would be the crossing is really needed because it's the safety of people trying to get across to the bus stop the other side, then to walk the other side of the pavement to the shop, which is it's half a mile in the opposite direction. So it's sustainable, but it's not terribly sustainable. Everyone's going to have to get out of that space. So the crossing is really important. And then I had another question about the construction. I mean, I know Pine Heath Nursing Home very well, and it's going to have a modest amount of investment to bring it up to be converted. And I'd have thought there was a lot more than a modest. Is the quality of build for these residences actually going to be sufficient in terms of insulation and you know, wind fenestration, et cetera, et cetera. So that was a question for the agent, but the highways is really the most important thing.
Okay, could I respond on the vehicle movements?
Well, with regard to the vehicle movements, there was a submission made by the applicants regarding some traffic data tricks and investigations that have been carried out between 2001 2021 into the subcategories of housing. And essentially the type of development that's coming forward here in terms of the flats and the units that are being proposed actually generate a lower level of traffic than a residential property as a dwelling house. There's a lot more shared movements between occupants. So the evidence, unfortunately, well, removed my ability to make any refusals based on an intensification of use. So we're in a position where we need to make the best situation from the existing arrangements, as far as we can do within what's available.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, if it's evidence-based, it's difficult to argue with. I have my personal views on it, and like you, I drive that road fairly often. Your second question was?
Methods actually really and the quality of build.
Right.
That might be something for the agent, but I say there is like an energy statement setting out how they're going to sort of do it sustainably. Part of that is air source heat pumps, but part of that is a fabric first. So including insulation, try and reduce the energy loss through the building, things like that. Can't remember the figures, but obviously that's sort of part of the energy statement proposals, part of it. But as I say, I'm sure the agent can clarify that, and obviously there's viability where costings were included in that too, if need be for members.
Mr. Haynes, I think you have heard that. Could you just respond to it, please?
On the energy and build quality, is that what I'm answering? So I've got here that energy, we've demonstrated that the development will provide at least 10% of energy from on-site solar and air source heat pump, whilst improvement to the fabric of the buildings will achieve an overall 79.4 reduction in energy use. I'm not an expert in building or an expert in energy, but we've hit some very high targets there. What I do know is that building regulation standards have gone up quite recently, and we're going to hit those targets. So it's good build quality, and certainly we're hoping to achieve very high energy and sustainability standards. we've shown that the development's not viable with the provision of affordable housing. The policy that we've got to comply with on this particular site is that we can only reuse the existing buildings. To reuse the existing buildings costs a lot of money. So the build costs, and to achieve all these energy standards and, you know, quality of build, the build cost is very high. And that tends to rule out the ability to provide affordable housing. So perhaps if you were looking at a greenfield site somewhere, you might be able to see that there's affordable housing because your build costs are necessarily lower. We'd consider that, definitely.
Who do I have next? Councillor John Toy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I don't like to repeat when we've got a busy agenda, but I do want to talk about the highways and how it relates here. We've got, in the suggested conditions, we've got energy consumption reduction, ecological mitigation, European protected species, biodiversity net gain, habitat management, tree protection, notification of commencement of GIRAMs, external lighting, all things that are good for the environment and welcome. We have got provision for cycle racks, I believe, in there, but get my right bit here, apologies. A highway user refers to anyone who uses a road, including pedestrians, cyclists, motorists, horse riders, or anyone else travelling on a public highway, essentially encompassing all people utilising a road for transportation purposes. The one we're putting visibility displays in for vehicles which give people occupant protection, but the people who do not have protection, the pedestrians, the cyclists, we've got nothing in there. And without that being a condition, I can't support this. It's just not acceptable without that condition. We've put all those other great conditions in there, but the one set of people, you know, the pedestrians and the cyclists that we should be encouraging because there is a bus route there, we're doing nothing to protect them. So I can't support it as it is. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Kim Toy.
Thank you. I'd like to point my question towards, I'm really sorry, I can't remember your name, Mr. Highways. Can you tell me what is the width of the road?
Off the top of my head, no.
Okay, so
Yes.
what's the minimal width that you would say, yes, we'll put a crossing in? Because we have crossings all over the place. I drive that road 6 times a day. Work 3 a week. A week. And so I know that road really well. And yes, it is a 30. We can't control speed, but the times that I go into that 30 miles an hour and people are pulling away from me. And with the unfortunate accident where 2 people lost their lives crossing over that road, then I have to question this. So, and we have other places that I'm sure that the road is narrower than that. It's not a narrow road, it's quite a wide road. So I question as to why we can't have a crossing on there to make it safer. And if we can't have a crossing, if you say, no, we won't put one in, and in that case, I can't support this. Is there any additional signage that we can use to alert drivers and make them think? Because I see a lot of people on that stretch who do not think. They're going to work, And they do not think, and it worries me when I'm going along that route. I have people on my back that are obviously going higher than 30 miles an hour.
Mhm.
And it's not a safe place. And you've got kids that get picked up from there and they may well move into that development. I've got nothing against the development at all, but this is what I'm worried about, the safety.
No, I can appreciate your concerns. Obviously, the stature of this route is, as a principal route, is one of those where we are expected to take wide loads. So we need to kind of have a clear area for wide loads, as well as being able to accommodate everything in there. I'm not saying I don't want a crossing there. That would be ideal. It's just whether it's feasible and achievable. And that's the bigger question. We probably look at 1.5 meters space to get the island in, and then you've got to think about the crossing points, the waiting areas. So, you know, and then maintaining the route widths as well is where we start to run into problems along here without widening the road and the footpath, and then it becomes quite an expensive and intrusive operation. So I'm happy to look into it and take some further advice, but that will need safety auditing just to consider the proposal, where's an appropriate location for it, what the sight lines are. So there's a number of points. Obviously with this, it's a brownfield site and we are tying into the existing infrastructure that we've got without the ability to push for more mitigation, in my view, but I'm happy to look at crossings.
Would average speed cameras improve matters, do you think?
I think we've got VAS down there. We've got warning signs for pedestrians, I think junction warning signs. So I think there's been probably a relative amount of signage and infrastructure put in place to try and control speeds, but obviously enforcement is going to be a key to that as well. We can try and get drivers to slow down, but obviously it's a difficult process, as you appreciate. Hence the reason for the slightly larger visibility display to try and get close to what we need.
Thank you. Yeah. Officer Lyon.
Yeah, I mean, clearly the crossing point and the safety along that stretch of road is clearly of concern. I mean, for me, when we're making planning decisions, we need to sort of be careful that we're not asking an applicant to solve problems that are almost beyond their site or existing problems beyond what's reasonable to ask an applicant to solve. Clearly, in this case, there's an existing use of that site. Yes, it's been closed for a number of years, but that would have generated a number of movements in and out of that site, which the higher authority have accepted that this scheme would lower the numbers going into and out of that site. Now, whether you accept that or agree with that, that's what the position is. It's just that if we're asking an applicant to pay or make contributions, we have to justify why we're asking an applicant to do that, because they've got a right to challenge. And but we need to obviously try and find a solution here. Now we've obviously heard clearly that the requirement for a 59 visibility display is what the higher authority prefer, and it may be achievable, but we're not clear on that. And we've heard from the applicant and the agent that they would be willing to consider a contribution. So that if committee are subject to that, so subject to the visibility display and to trying to secure a contribution towards that crossing. I'm not saying the applicant should pay for the entirety of that, because that may not be appropriate. But to secure a contribution towards that would actually be a first step towards trying to find a solution. So it could be a matter that you delegate to the assistant director for planning, that subject to further negotiations on achieving or seeking to achieve that visibility display, and seeking a contribution might be a step forward to allowing this to proceed.
I believe that is in line with your proposal, is it, Councillor Brown?
Well, yes, Mr. Chairman, that's why I sort of concentrated on the visibility display aspect, because that is within our gift to control through the planning process. Putting in a crossing or an alternative highway safety measure to a crossing, if it's not possible to install a crossing because of the constraints of the highway itself, we've got to be flexible there, quite obviously, and it's generous of the applicant to offer to make a contribution, and I would like to to explore that, but we can't be so prescriptive. We can't say to our solicitor, look, that must go in the section 106 agreement. We can't necessarily say that because for the reasons that Mr. Lyon has.
Yes,
outlined.
to remind members that the recommendation for delegated approval, which means officers will deal with issues such as those. Councillor Hankins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I support the fact that this disused building is being converted into housing because that's a principal requirement. But I think the biggest issue here is I travel the road like a number of members up and down to my ward, and this road is manifestly not safe. I don't think there's any other way of saying it. We've already had fatalities. There's a plethora of signs, as a friend has pointed out, but in terms of slow down, do this, do that, do the other, which is making very little difference. So I think I would support a deferment whilst the safety aspects of this road are looked at, whether it's a crossing, additional splay or whatever. But as it is at the moment, any change in that road which doesn't address the safety issues, the human safety issues, I think should be looked at very carefully.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to come in? Yes. Councillor.
Thank you for letting me go again, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to, it was about the vehicle movements. This is a different type of vehicle movements, so they may be reduced, but we've now got children here who will be going to catch the bus, which will be on the other side of the road. It's very different to what we had before, where it was a care home, where it was been people visiting people in care. They're likely to be brought in vehicles and taken in vehicles. It's a very different use of that access point across that road. And I really have concerns about it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Holiday.
Really having difficulty understanding this reduced number of vehicle movements because I make there 63 cars attached to these particular dwellings, and of which the children going in and out to school, etc. So I really don't understand how we've reduced the vehicle movements. So I'm going back to actually wanting the bigger splay, because if we've got lots of cars doing lots of movements, which is what I believe is going to happen, and we are going to need the bigger splay, and we definitely need some sort of crossing. Could we not have a zebra crossing? Is it because it's an A road? I mean, there isn't, I don't think there's space for a crossing in the middle, because you often get big caravans and big tractors and things going along that road. So is there not some other way of getting a crossing that doesn't mean you've got to have an island?
Part of the investigation would determine what the appropriate crossing would be. I think, yeah, it's what's appropriate for the setting and what would work with the type of users, really.
I might just point out too that the woodland around it is covered by a tree preservation order too, so that might have implications if the visibility does need to be widened as well, if it needs tree loss on the protected trees.
Let's switch to it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We appear to be moving towards a vote. And I do want Councillor Ringer's request for dog waste bins to get lost in all of this. I wonder if I can make that a recommendation, because I know that living down my road, which goes towards Felbrigg Park, it's a dog walker's paradise and not a pedestrian's paradise. So there's that. And also, it's not always the road's fault, I'm afraid. And as Officer Mortimer said, there are a lot of signs, and unfortunately we tend to disregard them. We all complain, don't we, about 30-mile-an-hour limits and 50-mile-an-hour limits, and we could be going quicker as drivers. But I think in this case, we really do need to concentrate on the traffic movements in and out of this building, the buildings and the visibility display. I fear that road isn't going to be wide enough for a traffic island. In a former life, I did used to know about these things, but I seem to have forgotten exactly the right width. But I think it's going to be nearer 8 meters, and I think that road is probably not much more than 6.5, so you can draw your own conclusions. But I just wanted to say that, and could we condition councillor Ringer's statement, please?
I'm not sure on that. That's another way.
Thank you, Chair, but my colleague just covered my point for me very nicely. Thank you.
Yeah, there's one point that nobody has raised, surprisingly, I think, in whether there's a possibility to condition primary residence only, to avoid yet further holiday and lets and second homes. I'm just raising it because I'm sure some members have thought about it.
So I hate to say you got me again, and it will be a different conclusion from my perspective than the last item. So just picking up on a couple of the last points before coming back to the highways issue and what the resolution could possibly be. So firstly, dog waste bins. Personally, I think we could interpret, and I'd be astonished if the applicant objected to this, but I'm just keeping an eye out for the agent in the corner of my eye, that the off-site parks and recreation ground bit that's referred to in the resolution could be interpreted broadly enough to include dog waste bins. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Secondly, with regard to principal residency restrictions, to misquote the chair slightly there, whether we like it or not, the North Norfolk and the national policy position doesn't have that as a provision we can insist on. Then if I was being putting the but to, unless it is within the neighbourhood plan that is relevant for the area, and there isn't such a plan here. There is, I'm simplifying slightly, in both Blakeney and Wells Next to the Sea in that regard, but not in the rest of the district. Then if I can come back to the highways position, which is not surprisingly the topic that has arguably dominated the discussion here today. I'm not going to read it out again, but I will just refer back to paragraph 11D of the NPPF, but that in my view does not go as far as to say the council should be approving things which it is thought to be unsafe from a highway perspective. Okay, but we also have here a scenario where the recommendation is for approval, where highways aren't objecting, but everybody acknowledges, if I'm being slightly flippant here, it would be better to have the larger visibility display, and there might be different views as to whether it's required or not, but I think everybody would agree it would be better, and it would undoubtedly be preferable if it was safer for people to walk from one side of the road to the other around there, but with a understandable series of concerns about both the ease of providing something that is safe in that location, because I'm not saying I know it as well as you, but I know it reasonably well. It wouldn't be easy to design something that is radically different there. Also an issue of is it fair within planning rules for the applicants to effectively be being tasked with making up for an existing deficiency in the network, although arguably they would be contributing to people walking across the road. So we've also got then a scenario with the visibility display, which Mr. Lyon referred to earlier, that yes, it would be, my word here, nice, but is it actually achievable and deliverable? In that guy's an uncertainty, I think it would be fair to say, as to whether it is. So personal view, there's two bits to this. If committee were of the view that it is essential that a larger visibility display is provided, I think it was 59 metres that was referred to, but whatever the number is, then I would caveat any authority you might give to me to ensuring the provision of that can be delivered. I don't want to condition something that we then find out can't be achievable. So I'd caveat it to that 59 point. And personally, if I'm picking up the mood music, that appeared to be an important first point for councillors. Then the second bit, which I think is personally a little bit more debatable, is to the potential for a contribution. And clearly you heard the agent say the applicant would be happy to have a chat about it. I'm misquoting him slightly, but that was the gist of what he said. And I'd agree with, apologies, I've forgotten which councillor it was, with the councillor that said, let's not be too prescriptive about the exact wording as to what, because if we say, for sake of argument, a certain type of crossing and that isn't achievable, then we're rather stuffed. Sorry, that's probably not a word I should use in a public forum, but there we go. In that regard, so you could add a second kind of caveat to my bit for officers to have the discussion to see if a suitable contribution to something that would improve crossing the road-based pedestrian safety adjacent or close to the site can be delivered. But clearly, whether to add either or both of those two caveats is for you. I'm not recommending in this case the same basis that I did in the last one.
Okay, we have a proposer for the recommendation. Would just refer members to the end of the officer's report, particularly the last paragraph regarding tilted balance and the final conclusion, I think is important. We have a proposal from Councillor Brown with the additional conditions subject to obvious discussion.
I'm happy to second it.
Did I get a seconder?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councillor McDonald.
Can I just say on the 106 then that if before the vote for the £68,928 included within that would be a contribution towards dog waste bin provision and obviously the collection and maintenance. That's what's agreed. And also, sorry, there was one point missed out. North Norfolk District Council Section 106 monitoring fee as well within that. Thank you.
And can I just ask for clarity here? So apologies to Councillor Brown because his proposition was some time ago. My recollection of his proposition included the visibility display point I made, but didn't include the looking at contribution towards the crossing bit.
Yes.
Or did it? Just want clarity before you vote on what is in and what is without.
I'm happy to clarify what I said. Having listened to the debate since I initially spoke, I'm happy for us to try to have a contribution to some form of road safety enhancement, whether it's a crossing or something else in the alternative, which is more deliverable to improve road safety. So, but we can't, in my view, we can't insist on a contribution, but I would like to explore the possibility of the applicant making one.
Okay, so for the avoidance of doubt, you will be voting on adding those two components in, plus the bits that Ms Croxon referred to. The one caveat I'd then put, so for sake of argument, the greater visibility display can't be provided, or no contribution, I'm not being critically of the applicant, is forthcoming to something that seems sensible at a sensible level, then it would end up coming back here because I wouldn't have the authority to issue the decision contrary to those two caveats. Okay.
Are we all clear?
You know what was going on then?
Councillor Beattie,
Abstain due to predetermination.
Councillor Boyle,
For.
Councillor Brown,
For.
Councillor Fisher,
For.
Councillor Fitzgerald, for Councillor Hankins, Councillor Heinrich,
For.
Councillor Holiday, Councillor MacDonald,
For.
Councillor Netherway, Councillor J Toy,
Against.
Councillor K Toy,
Against.
and Councillor Vickers.
For.
So you have one abstain, 2 against, and
Recommendation.
4.
Recommendations.
Chair, Chair, I just need
Okay, we all gathered again. Okay, let's move to item 10. This is Fakenham, BF/24/1079, a drive-through restaurant. Officer Smith.
Yeah, good morning. Yeah, the application proposes a drive-through restaurant for McDonald's, car parking, landscaping and associated works. So, thank you. In terms of the site location, the site's located to the rear of the Lidl supermarket in Holt. It's in the site allocated in red on there. The site is currently fenced off, unused, vacant, and it's surrounded by other industrial and commercial development. It's highlighted with so you've got in red is Lidl, you've got Haynes Daniels that surrounds the site as well as some workshops, and there's obviously an area of woodland to the south east of the site. Whilst the site is located in a designated employment area that has extant planning permission for 3 retail units, totaling an area of 1,545 square metres, and this was approved through the original Lidl application in 2007. This just wasn't built out. In terms of the site photos, there's just a few, they're sort of fairly similar, but just gives an element of the site context. Now, this is a view looking south into the Lidl car park, and this is the access road that will be used towards to get access in the rear of the site where the fenced area is. There's a hedgerow, as you can see, it's to the west, and that will be retained as part of the planning application that's been proposed to be retained. Next slide, thank you. This is looking further south as well. You can see the fence there and you can start to see the context of the surrounding sort of industrial commercial buildings. Yeah, this is looking further southwest, and actually you can see the larger scale Haynes Daniels building to the rear. I've got a few photos and inside the site, and these were taken from the arboriculture report, which is quite useful. Again, this is looking east to the site, and you can see the existing hedgerow to be retained and a further sort of building outside the site. Again, looking south, and you can see that the sort of the site's vacant scrub land. Again, a larger building to the south. And to the west of the site, again, another view of the Haynes Daniels factory. Again, scrub land. It shows that the context of the site as is. I've put this proposed site and the landscaping plan together because it shows how the context of the site is proposed as it stands. The McDonald's restaurant's to be located to the rear of the site. It proposes 55 car parking spaces, 2 grill bays, 2 accessible spaces, 10 cycle spaces and some charging points. The external floor space of the building's approximately 377 square metres with 92 square metres of dining space, which will have around 79 covers or seats, and an external patio area is also proposed. And you can see from the landscaping plan that there's sort of fairly extensive vegetation being retained and enhanced, as well as landscaping scheme and retention of the hedgerow on the eastern boundary. In terms of the proposed elevations, it's single storey. It's approximately 5.6 metres in height, and it's a mixture of contemporary and corporate approach to the scheme, using a mixture of vertical cladding, horizontal grey cladding, and grey brick. And as I said, McDonald's have a general corporate approach to designs for their schemes. We consider it to be appropriate in terms of its form and its scale, and essentially in relation to the context in it, which is set. And as you can see, it's not necessarily a flat roof. What you've got there is a slightly higher parapet, which is hiding all the sort of general equipment, the condensers, any flues or anything. So that's why it looks, the design is designed specifically to hide all the sort of more unattractive elements of a, restaurant. This is the floor plan. There's really not much to say necessarily, but you will notice that the dining area is sort of the smaller proportion, and a lot of the space is sort of back office, really. Most people probably been in McDonald's. In terms of the main issues, members will note on Office Report on page 55 to 69, it includes the full planning application details, representations and parish and other consultee comments. The following list is a reminder of the main issues raised in the report, and I will focus on just a particular couple of these as we just go through the rest of the presentation. Essentially, the principal development, the highways implications or impacts, litter, management and noise. I will note there are no outstanding objections from any of the consultees remaining as part of the application going forward. In terms of the principal development, the site is located within a designated employment area where, in policy terms, a restaurant takeaway would result in a conflict with what is our policy SS5, which essentially on SS5, which is employment generating proposals, it's B-class uses, which is your distribution, commercial, industrial. So a restaurant takeaway is in conflict with this policy. However, officers have had regard to the extant planning permission, which would enable 1,545 square metres to be erected. Additionally, we've undertaken what we call a sequential test, which is looking at all sequentially preferable sites from the town centre first going forward. And officers have considered this is a sequentially acceptable site. We've also had regard to the 120 jobs that would be created, which is a significant economic benefit as part of the application proposal. We've therefore concluded that the economic benefits and the extant permission are sufficient to outweigh the harm against policy conflict with SS5. The next two slides I've just put in terms of the access or highways going into the site as existing, because I know that highways impacts and safety has been raised within the representations. The first one is a view looking orientation northeast from the existing little store. It's probably familiar to some. And obviously there's the view looking further, it'll be southwest from there, is from Holt Road. In terms of, there is no objections from the highways officer as part of the application. They've also had regard to the extant planning permission. Though a highways improvement plan has been proposed, which details drop curbs and tactile paving as part of the planning proposal going forward. And this will be, as this shows Greenway Lane. And you can see that the build out curb and the drop curb and tactile pavement enable pedestrians to cross. Sorry. Oh no, that's fine. Oh, no, it's fine. No, the next one's going to be about litter management. I know that again, that was another concern. I didn't have a slide, apologies. Inside the site will contain 10 litter bins, and it will also impose a litter management plan, which is standard and all across most of the McDonald's restaurants, and the details are contained in the officer report. The agent has also confirmed they're willing to enter into a legal agreement to provide 6 additional bins outside of the site. And monies to be agreed for the provision of emptying and maintenance over a 15-year period. And in terms of noise and disturbance, again, this was also a concern raised with representations. The application submitted documents and additional supplementary documents in relation to a number of issues of noise and odour associated with also delivery collections, fixed plant, equipment, parking activities. Assessment of our environmental health teams conclude there is no further objections related to noise or disturbance given the studies that have been submitted. Concern was still, however, was always going to be raised with the use of a 24-hour use of the site. However, the agent has agreed with a restriction for opening hours from 6 a.m. till midnight, and they will only open between 6 a.m. and midnight and close between midnight to 6 in the morning. We have no further objections from environmental health colleagues in relation to a conditional approval on opening hours. In terms of approval, the application is proposed for approval subject to a section 106 relating to financial contribution and maintenance of litter bins, and the conditions as followed, and anything necessary, by the Assistant Director. Thank you.
Thank you. Good detailed report. Right, I have no speaker. I have one objecting speaker, Tracy Bennett. You can come to the front, please.
I'm on the 3 minutes, but I'm losing my voice a little bit. So I shouldn't go 3 minutes. We live opposite. You haven't really shown the residential area in your pictures, but we live opposite that site. And our concern is the vehicular access being directed through the little car park, because this arrangement would push added vehicles onto the already very complex intersection of 7 entrances, exits, and a junction, and then add to that the private drives for the houses. With McDonald's own data showing on average per hour 50 to 100 cars visiting a drive-through, and this data doesn't include sit-in visitors, whichever way out of town traffic is directed to this site, it will still have to negotiate this intersection. This additional traffic will make these already busy roads overloaded and potentially the little car park a race circuit. The giveaway junction on the Holt Slip Road is more of a race starting block, with drivers trying to beat the traffic turning right from the Greenway lane onto the Holt Road, and overtaking vehicles turning right or left. Some drivers signal they are taking the left fork, but do not turn them off, indicating to the vehicles exiting Lidl they are turning left into Lidl when they're not. Therefore, drivers pull out in front of cars which are often in excess of 30 miles per hour, a speed which is easily built up as there's no mechanism to slow the traffic coming from the Pensort Road roundabout. The exit road from Holt Road onto Greenway Lane is used as an entrance, and the entrance from Greenway Lane onto Holt Road an exit, sometimes deliberately to avoid queuing traffic and perhaps accidentally because they are unfamiliar with the road, as will be the case with non-local vehicles whose destination is just to McDonald's. We ask that the committee Consider options that would have less impact on residents, pedestrians and drivers. A solution to mitigate all of the raised issues would be that the vehicular access is directed through the George Edwards Industrial Estate via Wyman's Way. This would keep the traffic, bright lights and late night noise, and it is well documented that fast food businesses attract antisocial behaviour away from the residential areas. It wouldn't affect the little car park, keeping the shoppers safe. If this alternative route is not an option, then would you please consider plans to manage speeding and the poor driving decisions pointed out, as safety will be compromised. In our view, the only option is to both reduce the speed limit and install speed cameras. It would have to be a positive deterrent to slow the traffic. Perhaps a pedestrian access through the east side of the little car park could be considered, especially as this fast food business will unfortunately attract children who are more likely to be on foot. And perhaps a Pelican crossing at the intersection of Thorpeland Road could be a safe place for people to cross. And if the committee could spend some time at the intersection before making their decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I have supporting speakers, Kevin Foley and Ben Fox, I believe, is the agent, who said they want to split the time. So ideally, it's just one of you who has just 3 minutes, but yeah. We have 1.5 minutes each then.
I'll be slightly shorter now. Good morning. My name is Ben Fox. I'm the planning consultant for the scheme. We have worked closely with the District Council throughout the application to develop our proposals, particularly the EHO, to manage local impacts through construction and operation. As outlined by the officer, we have agreed to reduce the restaurant opening hours from 24/7 to 6 to midnight, and we are delighted that officers are recommending the scheme for approval. We have collaborated with Norfolk County Council Highways and reached an agreement for appropriate off-site improvements, which is supported by the Highway Authority, who have no objections. The restaurant will be located just south of Fakenham's Little Supermarket. The site benefits from extant permission for retail terrace and is brownfield. If approved, the application will help support the vitality of the local area, bringing the brownfield site back into use, creating over 100 new jobs across a range of full and part-time roles. I'll now hand over to Kevin to talk a bit more about McDonald's.
Good afternoon. My restaurant teams and I take pride in being part of our local communities. We seek out opportunities to sponsor football and rugby teams in Norfolk. We establish local links, working with politicians and council officers to ensure McDonald's has a positive impact on our communities, such as around our Cromer restaurant, where, among other things, we funded off-site litter bins. We are committed to maintaining a clean environment, and the team at this proposed restaurant in Fakenham will conduct 3 daily litter patrols covering a 150-metre radius, collecting all litter, not just McDonald's packaging. We also engage in larger community clean-up events with local volunteers, and we are pleased to make the same commitment to Fakenham with an off-site contribution to litter bins. Addressing antisocial behaviour and ensuring community safety are key priorities for all of us. All shift managers are trained in conflict resolution, and we work closely with the police and council to address any concerns. Our restaurants are equipped with CCTV and staff safe, and we have protocols to minimise customer noise and ensure the safety of both staff and customers. Sustainability is at the heart of our business. All electricity in this restaurant will come from 100% renewable sources. Over 80% of kitchen waste is recycled, which equates to 40% of total waste. These initiatives align with North Norfolk District Council's climate emergency strategy, supporting the district's goal of achieving net zero emissions across its operations by 2030. In summary, we believe this application will deliver significant benefits for Fakenham, supporting the local economy, enhancing the town's vitality, and contributing to the community development. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to the officers for a very comprehensive report. So this is a significant development for Fakenham, and I've been lobbied by those in favour of the McDonald's planning application, and also by those who object to it. And as such, I thought it deserved broader consideration by committee colleagues, and also to give people who feel strongly about it a chance to be heard by this committee. I'm not going to comment on the merits or demerits of McDonald's. As far as I'm concerned, it's a personal choice. I recognise the significant economic benefits that this will bring to Fakenham, particularly the 120 four-door part-time jobs. And I cautiously welcome the litter control programme put in place, but I would like to see that monitored as part of planning consents. Residents who have approached me in favour of this welcome the economic benefits, and comments I've received. It provides a place for young teens not old enough to go to the pub to meet and have a coffee or a milkshake. It provides food for farm workers who may be working late on the harvest, or shift workers in the nearby factories, particularly as some of the takeaways in the town close early, such as the fish and chip shop that closes at 8:30. It's also been pointed out that Lidl has deliveries between 9 o'clock at night and 5:30 in the morning. Nevertheless, and this is an important point, I share the objecting speakers' concerns about traffic and the safety of pedestrians and motorists. But it's an incredibly tricky junction at the intersection of Thorpeland Greenways and Holt Road. And I think the flow of traffic for a drive-through is likely to be different from cars just stopping at a shop or a supermarket. And I think the safety of Fakenham residents and visitors must be paramount. I don't want to be critical, but I feel that in this instance, that highways have not given this their full attention. I mean, the level of attention that was given to the previous High Kelling case was impressive. And I don't think that this has received the same level of understanding. And as a matter of plan, if this is to go forward, I would like to see some more stringent mitigations to control traffic flow and ensure the safety of pedestrians, particularly on Holt Road, because I mean, Holt Road speeding in Fakenham has been a problem since I've been elected. One of the first things that came to my notice was residents complaining about speeding at the other end of Holt Road, where there's actually a zebra crossing and an alleyway where the children from Fakenham Infant School come in one direction and the children from Fakenham Junior School come in the other direction. So I really would like to see our highways, county highways department working more closely with local representatives and the applicant to do something about traffic control, because I don't think that dropped curbs really cuts it. And yes, I think that that's if it's possible to have some mitigations, I would be most grateful if that could be done. And I also would like to query why the alternative route through the industrial estate was not given more consideration, as there's a clear route through Wyman's Way and the George Edwards industrial estate that might have been a safer route. It would have avoided that tricky intersection. It's not an accident black spot like the High Kelling Road, but we don't want it to become an accident black spot either. Thank you.
Thank you. Given that highways is come up a couple of times now, could we ask for your comments? I mean, there's no objection and there's mitigations, but it's the other issues that probably beyond this application.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this is a difficult situation. It's introducing a new use into an area of Fakenham that is obviously close to the Greenway Lane junction. Looking at the accident history for the area, though, there's very limited accident history recorded that we could utilise to set up a case. And obviously, you know, we've already considered that the extant use on the site could generate comparable levels of traffic. The existing highway infrastructure is in place and it's been approved and operating for a number of years. So in terms of sort of mitigation measures, I'm finding it quite difficult to find a valid reason really to ask for anything more than is currently presented.
Okay, thank you. Members, who wishes to start? Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The small building to the north east of this site, I think there's a pharmacy from memory. The car park in front of it, I'm sure, is used by people visiting the pharmacy, and I'm also sure that people going to Lidl's then go across to the pharmacy or vice versa. So that would generate quite a lot of pedestrian movements across there, and also as the vehicle movements are increasing, through the site to the McDonald's, it's going to be more and more tricky to get in and out of the pharmacy access as it's so close to the junction. And I'm just wondering two things, whether this has been considered, A, and B, if McDonald's had come first, would Highways have allowed the pharmacy to sit where it is now?
I think the answer would be yes. The access seems to be far enough away from the intersection not to be of too much concern for us.
Thank you. That's the holiday.
I've got a question and then a couple of points. Did we answer the question about the alternate access? Did we put that to bed? And why we're not doing the alternate access as was suggested by?
Yeah, this is the first I've heard of an alternative access, and certainly looking at the site, it does seem to be landlocked by other commercial ventures. So I'm not 100% sure what that access is.
Any comment from officers?
Yeah, I would agree with the highways officer. It's the first time I've heard about an alternative access, but we are considering the proposal to hand as presented to us in the application.
I did initially put this proposal forward. I don't know which planning officer received it, but I was told that on ecological grounds that it couldn't go forward. Because although it does seem to be just scrubland rather than valuable woodland.
Yeah, thank you. The benefit of local knowledge can be useful. Anybody else? Yes, go along.
Well, my question's about litter, and it's not local litter. I pick up McDonald's 13 miles away from the current McDonald's in Cromer, and it goes further than that because I don't do litter picking on my bicycle rides, I only do it on my walk. So I know that in all the villages within my cycle ride circuit, I'm picking up fast food litter. And I think that is absolutely appalling. And is there any way that we could possibly control that? Thank you.
I wish we could. It's a regular thing at the Britain Line Rail Partnership meetings relates to litter on the railway at Cromer, a lot of which has come from McDonald's, unfortunately. And of course, only Network Rail can clear that. Councillor Brown.
Yes, just following on from what Councillor Holly was saying, I was driving on a C-class road from Melton Constable to Holt the other evening and went round a bend, and what did I see in front of me? It was a McDonald's brown paper bag full of litter, which had spilled out all over the lane. It was the only litter on that stretch of road for miles. The Councillor Holliday is quite right. If you look at litter stats, and I think McDonald's will probably be in a Champions League position for being one of the principal offenders, and that's why they have these litter management plans that they offer up, which is absolutely fine. I think their litter management plan will control litter discarded by pedestrians accessing these premises more effectively than motorists who, as Councillor Holliday alluded to, will probably discharge their litter through a window that they wind down in some remote spot. And I think the stats show that it's probably 50 to 60% of litter being caused in that way, as opposed to pedestrian discarded litter within sort of 150 metres or whatever the tolerance area is for the litter management plan. So I don't sort of hold out too much hope about this being very effective. It seems to me to be sort of, environmentally friendly, greenwashing, as it were, obviously to make the case for obtaining a consent.
Just a comment on enforceability, etc.
I mean, well, at what point or where do we draw the line on sort of planning's involvement on a lot of these things? Because a lot of it is individuals making personal choices to discard their litter in inappropriate places. And is it really for the planning system to manage how people go about conducting their daily lives? Because we all have choices to make, and most of us to act responsibly will put that in the nearest bin or take it home with us rather than depositing it somewhere. So we can't really hold that against the applicant because of individuals' personal choices. I mean, say for writing someone's number plate on a piece of packaging so that you could identify that person, it's hard to know what else you could do to discourage people from doing that. But that's more about educating people and kind of encourage them to take responsibility for their own littering. But I think I've said enough on that now.
Thank you. Councillor John Toy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I think to be fair to McDonald's, they're not alone. My ward sits off the A140 and I get stuff from Norwich that's thrown out. That's not the fault of McDonald's. You know, it's from all organisations. I do believe actually they even print stuff on their receipts and on the things that are given to people in their drive-throughs. I stand corrected, but I believe it used to be on there. So it's. I don't think it's anything that we can control here, and I believe that that actually McDonald's do work to try and address this, and they can only deal with the local area. We can't expect them to clean up the countryside. It's not only them that's doing it. What I was going to go on and say is actually in terms of the application that's here before us, I'm happy to propose. I hadn't got to there, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Beattie. Okay. Councillor Fitzgerald.
Did somebody jump in before me because I was happy to second it?
Yes, Councillor Beattie.
Right,
Just
okay,
you turn up
get it.
that way rather than you. Okay. If nobody else wants to speak, and we have a proposal, recommendation to approve from Councillor John Toy, seconded by Councillor Marlon Beattie. Could we have the vote, please?
Councillor Beattie,
For.
Councillor Boyle,
For.
Councillor Brown,
For.
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 Councillor Heinrich,
For.
Councillor Holiday, Councillor McDonald,
Abstain.
Councillor Netherway, Councillor J Toy,
For.
Councillor K Toy,
For.
and Councillor Vickers.
Abstain.
Yeah. Okay, I've seen 10 in favour, 1 against, 2 abstentions. The application is approved, subject to the conditions as set out. Thank you. Right, it's 25 to 1. We will take the agenda item 11 now, and then we'll take a break.
Mr. Chairman, just before you start, I have a meeting at 1 with someone external. Do you think we'll be done by then, or would you prefer if I left now and then not take part in this?
I would hope we could deal with this one before 1 o'clock.
Thank you. If I need to go, I need to go. Mr.
Yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
fine. Okay, this is Sheringham PF/24/2541, another food takeaway. Yeah, we are, rather, aren't we? Where is this about? Darryl, where's Darryl then? Apologies, we seem to be short of a case officer at the moment.
So as Mr. Watson gets himself ready to present this, can I just explain the context of the call-in for a second? So I called this application in, as you will have noted, and Mr. Watson will explain in a bit more detail. Officers are recommending refusal of the application. In discussion, for want of a better word, with the ward councillor, the ward councillor is going to pitch an additional reason or two that she feels should be added to the reasons put forward by your officers. So as my team and Councillor Withington didn't see eye to eye on the reasons rather than the overall direction, it has ended up here. Okay. But Mr. Watson will hopefully, with that ad lib from me, be now ready to present it.
Thank you, John. Ready? Yeah. Item 11, starting on page 71 of the agenda. A slight update to the report. Few words seem to be missing at the end of the last sentence on page 78 of the agenda, which should end refuse, storage and disposal. Right, just go straight onto the slides. Oh, it's okay. This first one shows the location of the site on the east side of High Street within Sheringham's town centre. There's two residential properties in close proximity sitting behind the street frontage. Not sure whether they're permanently occupied dwellings or holiday lets, but for the purposes of this, the residential. Next, please. This shows the application site in the context of the primary retail frontage for the purposes of the application of policy EC5 of the core strategy. The frontages shaded yellow are those within Class E, which of the use classes order, previously Class A1 for the purposes of the policy, and the green ones are the ones that are not in any specified use class. The use classes policy EC5 relates to Class A1, but the changes to the use classes order incorporated that and other uses within Class A and some within B into a new Class E in 2021, I think it was. Okay. Next, please. This shows the existing front elevation. It's the site's half of that property's frontage. There's no changes proposed. Any advertisements required would be likely to require separate consent. Next, please. This is the rear elevation with the drawing on the right showing the location of the proposed kitchen, the flue for the proposed kitchen ventilation system. Next, please. This is the north side elevation, again showing the position of the flue. There's not an opposing side elevation because there's another property attached to it. Next, please. This shows the existing and proposed floor plans. As can be seen, it's quite a small unit. Bin storage is shown to the rear in a small courtyard, but there's no access out of it, meaning waste would have to be taken through the kitchen and food serving areas. So where it says, you can see the bin storage location proposed there, but there is that courtyard, but it doesn't run through to the sort of shared access way on the south side of the building, that group of buildings. Next, please. This is just the site photos. This is the blue arrow denotes the photo viewpoints. This shows the property as it is. It seems to have been used for some sort of food use previously, but that could have been for a restaurant, which would fall within Class A1, so didn't need permission for a change of use from what was Class A1. Sorry, being Class E now. So yeah. Next, please. This shows the side elevation. You can see where the bins are proposed to be located, and in the foreground where the plants are. That's the frontage to the residential properties. Next, please. And then that's looking at the rear, showing the sort of constrained courtyard. Next, please. And this shows the views you would get of the flue. That actually says looking west, but it's looking east from the west side of High Street. So you see a glimpse view over that single-storey unit attached to it. Next, please. Again, that's the view looking southwards along High Street. You'd see that view, but the further back you got, you'd lose it because of the angle of vision. Next, please. And that's the looking north down High Street, and that view would not be changed in any way by the proposal. So, next, please. Turning to the main issues, the proposal is acceptable in principle and complies with policy EC5, as it would not result in more than 30% of the units being in a use, not what was previously within Class A1 of the use classes order, which, as I mentioned, was amended a few years ago, incorporating other uses formerly in the A class. And that policy has diminished in any event because of the changes to the use classes order. What we're considering is the effect in terms of the impact on the designated frontage within which the site is located, rather than the town centre or town as a whole, in terms of the number of hot food takeaways or other what were Class A1 uses. On page 75, reference is made to actions such as the use of exclusion zones, which may be used to limit the proliferation of this type of use, for example, in close proximity to schools. But there's no policy basis for this in respect to the current core strategy or the emerging local plan, North Norfolk local plan. The only external alteration is the addition of the ventilation flue. For the reasons set out in the report, it's considered this would have limited visual impact, particularly if it had a dark matte finish, which could be secured by condition. The harm to the significance of the Sheringham conservation area would be less than substantial, and that harm would, in officers' opinion, be outweighed by the benefits explained on page 77 of the agenda. With regards to living conditions, with the proposed opening hours, ventilation scheme, the site's town centre location, and the fact that there are no hours conditions attached to the property currently, which could be used for the range of uses which now fall within Class E, is considered, the proposals considered acceptable in this respect. There is, however, an issue with the arrangement for waste management as considered on pages 78 and 79. In summary, whilst refuse bins will be stored in a courtyard to the rear of the property, such bins would be close to those two adjacent residential properties, potentially affecting living conditions in terms of outlook and odour impacts. And furthermore, there's no access out of the courtyard other than through the building, meaning that bins would have to taken through food preparation and serving areas when they have to be presented for collection. Whilst concerns in terms of possible contact with food, for example, are matters that would be considered by environmental health, the provision of adequate refuse and collection arrangements is a legitimate planning consideration. The proposed arrangements could potentially lead to bins being kept on the street for some time, for example. On this matter yesterday, the applicant provided a plan indicating access from the courtyard to the rear into the private access way to the south. As part of this land is not within the edge of the application site boundary or a blue line indicating it is on land under the applicant's control. The applicant has been advised this cannot be considered now. He was advised to withdraw the application, but has chosen not to. So we're considering it on the basis of what I've just said. So the recommendation on page 80 of the agenda is for refusal for reasons relating to inadequate refuse bin storage arrangements. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We move to speakers now. The clerk to Sheringham Town Council. Shall I care to come to the front again?
Although Sheringham Town Council is keen to see this premises return to a proper retail use, it strongly objects to the proposed change of use from a shop to a hot food takeaway, particularly in relation to this application due to the inadequate refuse storage and the potential environmental and hygiene risks associated with the HVAC system. A key concern is the lack of adequate refuse storage. The site access raises significant hygiene and health and safety issues, as the waste could create unpleasant odours and attract vermin, particularly as the bins would be stored in close proximity to residential flats. This situation is not only impractical, but also in direct conflict with the North Norfolk Core Strategy Policy EN13, which seeks to prevent contamination and safeguard public health and residential amenity. The additional refuse generated would also risk excessive littering, not just in the vicinity of the premises, but a much wider area of the town and beachfront as the food is consumed and packaging disposed of. Also, the proposed extraction system whilst outlined in the application, also raises concerns. The planned flue installation is expected to project 2 metres above the roof and would sit near to the ridge of the building. This extraction system would have a significant visual impact on the Sheringham Conservation Area, and while the Environmental Health Officer has not raised objections to the proposed noise or odour control measures, the Town Council highlights the risk that the HVAC system may not function effectively, leading to potential air quality issues and nuisance to nearby residents. The flue's position, visibility, and its potential for odour escape are significant environmental concerns, particularly in a town centre with residential areas close by. Given these issues with both refuse management and the HVAC system, the Town Council strongly urge the refusal of the permission of the application. These strong concerns, as well as the wider objections noted in the STC earlier objection, but specifically now regarding hygiene, residential amenity and potential health impacts, align with the policies of the North Norfolk Core Strategy, including policies EN4, EN13 and CS policies SS1 and EC5, which exist to protect the environment and public health.
Thank you. No objecting speaker, no supporting speaker. Go to Councillor Whittington again.
Thank you. Thank you for your explanation. That's helpful. As ward councillor and following consultation with the agreement of my fellow Sheringham ward councillors, I'm pleased the planning team have recommended this for refusal. I'm also grateful for the opportunity to discuss this refusal at Development Committee today for the following reasons. The reasons stated for refusal have been well outlined in terms of the waste and also concerns expressed about the flue system. I am concerned, however, that the recommendations for refusal do not consider the negative impact on the vibrant independent sound centre from the proliferation of hot food takeaways. I recently asked the committee to refuse the application for 10 Church Street from Domino's Pizza for the same reasons. The community concerns were not about another national chain coming forward, but about the changing dynamic of the town centre from a domination of hot food takeaways. It would therefore be both remiss of me and inconsistent if I were to not ask this committee to consider the inclusion of these reasons for refusal in their consideration of the application. For the benefit of those not previously involved in the Church Street application, or for those who find an aide-memoire helpful, here is a summary of the points I believe to be salient to this application also. The site is in the heart of a predominantly independent and vibrant town centre, which, although a seaside town, also has an important role to play in supporting the local community with all year-round services, not just hospitality and visitor attractions designated as sui generis planning use. Apologies if my Latin isn't pronounced correctly. Allowing this application and further increasing the number of takeaways and eateries could potentially be a tipping point for the town and have a negative impact on the sustainability of the town centre as a whole. In turn, having significant impacts on a wide area will set a precedent that might well apply to other applications. This would further add to the problem and see a route to the decline of Sheringham town centre, as illustrated in many other coastal towns up and down the country. We have currently a good mix of general retail and service sectors, along with hospitality and entertainment. However, the eatery and takeaway sector is beginning to dominate this vibrant space. There are now 41 businesses in this category out of a total of 114. I believe this contravenes policy EC5. This policy, although now somewhat outdated with recent changes to class uses with town centres, but the principle behind it of preventing primary retail frontage areas from becoming dominated by this category of classified business, eateries, hospitality, betting shops, amusements, etc., is a principle which still stands and is very relevant here. Policy EC5 specifies that these businesses should not exceed 30% of the PRF area. It is, however, unrealistic to consider a town centre as segmented into different PRF areas, which focus on a particular side of the street and not the primary retail area of the town as a whole. If you consider the whole town centre, which is 114 business units, and the proportion of sui generis business is not dissimilar, approving another hot food takeaway application in the town means figures would result in 36% of businesses having this classification. This still contravenes the NNDC policy EC5. The MPF in paragraphs 96 to 107, promoting health and safety communities, states that planning policies and decisions should aim to achieve healthy, inclusive and safe places, which includes 96C, through the provision of local shops and access to healthier food. Planning for healthy communities has an important role to play in the future of our community's health. 97B, to take into account and support the delivery of local strategies to improve health, social, cultural well-being for all the sections of the community. 97C, guard against the unnecessary loss of valued facilities and services, all of which is reflected in local policy for North Norfolk. There are currently 14 red-coded food outlets in Sheringham. With approval of this application, this would be 15. If we are to support local health strategies in a meaningful way, then we should take account of the NPF guidance, which is available to us. As already raised, there are concerns for litter, and as a plastic-free town, we would support the removal of single-use plastic. If the committee were to agree to the recommendation of refusal for officers for the application for hot food takeaway, I ask them to consider including the reasons outlined also as part of the refusal reasons. I thank the committee for taking the time to consider this application, as I appreciate you've had a very busy schedule. Thank you.
Thank you. Well timed. The officers want to respond to any of the points raised by Councillor Withington?
Yeah, policy EC5 applies to individual primary retail frontages, not the sum total across the town. I mean, some food uses also fall within Class E now, so they may have changed without the need for planning permission anyway. It's only hot food takeaways that are in no specified use classes. Restaurants, for example, they fall within Class E, so they could have changed from A1 to what was A1 without the need for permission.
Thank you for clarification. Members. Councillor Vickers.
Could I ask for clarification on the bins? I didn't quite catch what you said at the end, but were you suggesting that there was a remedy for this and another planning application could come forward, and the real stopgap on this is the bins?
Yeah, in officer's opinion, the issue is the bin storage arrangements, but they did send a plan yesterday showing an area to take the bins through to the shared access way to the south side of that block, but that is not included within the application site boundaries, so we don't know whether it's land under their control or not. So we advise them to withdraw this application and then resubmit it on that basis, which have chosen not to do that.
Thank you. Councillor John Toy.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, having heard what's been said, thank you to officers for their presentations, and for Councillor Withington. Having heard what Councillor Withington said in response, I'm still unclear about what controls we have. However, I do think we should note that, and I think it is a valid point that she raises and where that sits in the rules. So I'm going to ask whether as a future training or whether we could receive a note to the committee so that we understand what that is, what the controls are now with those rules having been changed, with people able to change, so that we understand in future that as our towns develop, that that we do make sure that we keep the right balance of businesses and what controls we have as a committee over that. But beyond that, which I think we need to understand, and if it's still appropriate to put that comment in as part of the refusal, I'm happy for that. But I am prepared to go with the officer's recommendation and propose. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Toy. Councillor Brown.
Yes, I'm happy to second that recommendation, Mr. Chairman. I've listened to carefully to what Councillor Withington has had to say as one of the local members. I think the report is carefully prepared. It covers all the relevant issues. It's a concern when someone is given the opportunity to withdraw an application and doesn't take that opportunity. So I'm quite happy to recommend refusal in accordance with the recommendation of the officer.
Okay, thank you. Any other member wants to come in? Councillor Fisher.
Should this application come forward again with access to the back with the bins, would this then go through as proposed? Because it seems to me we wouldn't, although we'd be probably against it for being a food outlet in the town, a further one, it wouldn't even come to us. It would just be given a tick by the officers because they'd come to some other arrangement with the food bins rather than dragging them through the front of the shop. On the assumption, the council's rules then are as they are now, and on the assumption, and I'm now getting 2 and 2 to add up to some number that may or may not be 4, that the town council object to it as they did today, then we would be engaging with Councillor Withington as to whether she wished to call the matter in at that point. And it would, broadly speaking, I'm simplifying, be down to her as to whether it came back before you or not.
Thank you. Yeah, happy with that?
Certainly a good answer, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Lunchtime.
Yeah, I think getting that way.
Did I not speak for long enough with my answer?
Plenty long left, Russell. Okay. Recommendation is for refusal for the reasons set out, and the final wording and any others, if necessary, are delegated to Assistant Director, who I presume has taken account of Councillor Withington's presentation.
Well, no, I had taken account of Councillor Withington's presentation, then I tried to listen to what the proposal was. I thought the proposal was to go with it as per the officer recommendation. Yeah, which whilst I heard Councillor Withington's comments, listen to them carefully, it doesn't change the recommendation.
Yeah, it's just that, yeah, you do appear to have the ability to add any other conditions, reasons for refusal that you wish. So, well, happy to leave that to you. Okay, so proposed John Toy, seconded Andrew Brown. Could we have the vote, please?
Councillor Beattie?
4.
Councillor Boyle?
4.
Councillor Brown?
4.
Councillor Fisher?
4.
Councillor Fitch-Tillett? 4. Councillor Hankins? Councillor Heinrich?
4.
Councillor Holiday? Councillor MacDonald?
4.
Councillor Neverway? Councillor J Toy?
4.
Councillor K Toy?
4.
And Councillor Vickers? It's unanimous.
Thank you. Recommendation for refusal is carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we are at 1 o'clock. Okay, I was going to propose we take a 5-minute comfort break and then just come back and we finish rather than take a lunch break. So, yeah, understood. So, yeah. Okay, well, welcome back. We're on the final items now, so the next one will not take us very long. It's agenda item 12, Holt PF 241760, relates to a change of use of an existing detached outbuilding and a rear garden to food processing room and cooking room for business use, direction of extension to house refrigeration, part retrospective. However, I'm advised that the applicant is unable to attend today for personal reasons related to health, but has additional information he wishes to provide on environmental health grounds, and clearly wishes to present the case himself, but he's unable to do so. I would therefore propose from the chair that we defer decision on this as a request that is brought back to committee as soon as possible. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'm quite happy to second that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, could we have to go through the vote process, of course. Proposal is for deferral for the reasons I've just given.
So councillor Beatty,
He's in fact abstaining.
councillor Boyle,
4.
councillor Brown.
Yeah.
4.
Councillor Fisher,
4.
councillor Fitchditch, she's gone.
He's no.
Councillor Hankins, councillor Heinrich,
4.
councillor Holiday, councillor MacDonald,
4.
councillor Netherway. Joe Toy's gone. Councillor K-Toy. 4. And councillor Vickers.
Okay, it's deferred unanimously, and if we could advise the applicant that we wish to bring it back as soon as possible. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to the final decision item, which is item 13 on your agenda. That is Chroma PF/24/2307, part retrospective on a property at Harbord Road. So Luckhurst presenting, I hope.
He's on the way, I think.
Which is on the way up.
I apologise, we haven't been as slick as we could have been. The previous deferral might have come speedily, more speedily than expected. I'm ad-libbing again to fill time.
Yes, well. No, please, no. Okay, well, just give off the Luckhurst, shall okay, yeah. Officer Luckhurst will present. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. So this is a full application. It's part retrospective and it seeks planning permission for a 3-storey detached property on Harbord Road in Cromer. Firstly, it's probably helpful to understand the site's history. So planning permission was granted back in 2018 for 4 dwellings, which you can see here outlined in grey, positioned to the east of the site. The plot we're looking at today, so the property in question was sold off separately and the applicant commenced works. However, it was later reported to our enforcement team that the works were not carried out in accordance with the approved plans. So a plan and application was requested, which is the application we are looking at today. The application that we're looking at, it is a new separate full application with permission for the remaining 3 properties to the east remaining. Therefore, whilst the design scale and amenity impact will be assessed in relation to the neighbouring development, the application will also be considered on its own merits, and if approved, it would have its own approval, which would be separate from the 2018 approval. So I'll just flick through some of the plans. So this is the proposed site plan. So as you can see here, the proposed dwelling, original development positioned to the east. The orange lines at the front of the site and to the east show new proposed fencing. Here we have the northwest elevation, so this is the front elevation. Southeast elevation, so the rear. Side elevation, northeast. Sections of the proposed property. And the ground floor plan. There is also an extension which will be owned by the neighbouring property, which provides garden room at ground floor and a study at first floor. And that's the second floor plan. These are the original plans which were approved under the 2018 application. So as you can see, here was the dwelling that we're looking at. So this was the original floor plan. And this was the original elevation. Going through some of the photos from the site. So this is a photo of Ashwell House, which is positioned east of the site. This property is considered to have a resemblance to the proposed property that we're looking at, and both being detached properties. It's considered that the properties will effectively frame the development in the middle. Some more photos looking west towards number 16 here. And then looking east. In this photo graph, you can also see an existing 1.8 metre timber fence positioned to the front of the property. This was replaced recently, again with a 1.8 metre fence. However, we did have some objections from Highways, so the fence was amended and taken down to 1 metre in height and also reduced in width. You can see it again here. These are some photos of the rear elevation. And this is the parking area to the side of the property. Another view also showing the extension which will belong to the neighbouring property. This is the porch, so the side view looking west. If I just go back, sorry, to, sorry, how do I get that to go back on so I could go to one of my other slides? You go to that one at the top. Yeah, perfect, thank you. Thank you. You can also see a fence here, which at the moment does measure 1.8 metres. We have had further discussions with the applicant following some objections regarding visibility for the neighbouring site, and the applicant has agreed to reduce this fence height to 1 metre for the first 2.4 metres of the fence. An amended plan has also been provided to reflect that. Since the creation of my presentation and the publishing of my report, we have received some further comments from the Highway Authority, which confirm that the boundary treatment of 1 metre is acceptable given the low speed residential setting, and also the removal of the fence panels at the front of the property and the reduction in height has been welcomed, and again, no issues with this. So the main issues to have a look at today is the external appearance of the proposed dwelling and the impact on the character of the street scene, highway safety and impact on amenity. If approved, recommended conditions will be details of materials, obscure glazing, removal of permitted development rights, provisions of the parking area and visibility displays. It's also important just to raise that I believe you would have all received an email yesterday from an objector highlighting some further issues with visibility and the fence to the east of the site. Again, I'm sorry, but that's, yeah, so recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice and concise. Okay, I have no town council speaker. I have no supporting speaker. I believe we have one objecting speaker who I've allowed to speak after the normal registration point. And I would remind you, you have 3 minutes, Mr. Smith. You'll be within your 3 minutes, please. You're ready.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Bernard Smith, the architect for the current approval, which is PF 18/1919, as well as owner of the larger portion of land with a conditional approval to erect the remaining 3 dwellings. I'm sorry, but I must just correct Olivia on something she said earlier. There has actually been an interim application which was submitted by the applicant, which was then subsequently withdrawn because of the likelihood of that application being refused. Okay, so anyway, my strong objection to this application is set out in detail within considerable written documentation submitted by myself. It's impossible to fully convey this to you within the 3 minutes allowed. Therefore, I sent an email to you all, and I hope you've received before you and fully understood the contents. This is a very complex situation. That is why it's extremely important for you to fully understand all the relevant facts before coming to a decision. I've listed the facts as a summary in chronological order before arriving at my own conclusion, seeking to help you arrive at the correct decision. I can assure you that the facts I presented to you are correct. The 1 to 200 scale model in front of you formed an important part of the current approval and helps you to fully understand the approved scheme in 3 dimensions. The model gives a very clear understanding of the importance of this consistent detailed design togetherness across the whole site. The applicant has deliberately chosen to ignore the terms of the conditional planning approval that he inherited with the full knowledge at that time of purchasing the site. In spite of the warnings given by the planning department and myself, he continued to introduce yet further unauthorised changes with the full knowledge of the potential enforcement action being applied. He's shown complete contempt for the planning system by ignoring the obligations by which he is bound to comply. He's destroyed the quality of the remainder of the development on my land. We're all bound by the same rules if the planning system is to be one of consistent decision making. This applicant has shown total disregard for important detail and material elements necessary to gain the support of your planning officers. I finally received planning approval in 2019 following a near 12-month period of serious negotiations. Choice of materials and detailing were an essential common denominator across the whole development, which this particular dwelling was and remains a very important part thereof. The unauthorised removal of important detail elements has completely destroyed the quality of this approved development. Having failed with the previous withdrawn application, the applicant has submitted this application in an attempt to use a backdoor solution to dig himself out of a rather large hole he alone created, seeking to cut corners and costs. This is totally unacceptable because he is simply playing the system in the hope that you will capitulate by taking the easy option to let him off the hook. I'd like to stay here to answer any further questions, please. Thank you.
No, I don't think I've got anything right to say.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Over the floor. It's very quiet already. Councillor Fisher, then Councillor Vickers.
Chairman, raise a point. I did struggling to understand what's the significant difference between the original approved application and this new one. Could you enlighten us on that, please?
Yes, so one of the main changes, for example, originally it was approved to have the property would have its own garage. That has been removed completely now, so it is just parking spaces on a driveway. There are some details on the elevations, such as windows that have changed, the positioning of them. What we would consider minor details have been amended, but I would say, and also the addition of the fencing to the eastern boundary and to the front of the property.
I'm just struggling to understand why this required a completely, if they're minor details, why this needed a new planning application and couldn't have been dealt with as minor amendment.
So we did have a variation of conditions application, which was submitted last year, and we were considering that. However, the amount of amendments we had on the plans, which some of them weren't quite correct, we had to request new plans. It started to get a little bit complicated. So we decided with the applicant, he had two options. He could either continue with the application as it was, or he could do a full application and start afresh with a new application. And as I said at the beginning, this would be a separate approval from the remaining three.
Clarification.
Thank you. Very useful, Mr. Luckhurst. Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Part of that was going to be a question of mine. I realise that land ownership is not a need for making a planning application, but there does seem to be some problem with who owns what. But I see in paragraph 2 it says that the ownership of the site, the applicant has shown a land registry title plan, which rather indicates to me that there is no confusion over to who owns what. I'm just wondering, obviously, if this continues, it may not be a planning problem, but is there a problem going forward in the future with this piece of land?
As you say, you are right. Land ownership is a civil matter. It's not a material planning consideration. Evidence has been provided by both the applicant and the neighbouring landowner. It's not for us to decide who's right and wrong. We have a certificate which has been signed on the application form, which we are told is correct. We have that in place, therefore that's what we have to go with. It will be down to the applicant and the adjoining landowner, if permission is granted, how they go about commencing further works in the future.
Thank you. Councillor Hankins.
Chairman, which I think has been partly answered. I mean, my understanding is that the applicant can make a bona fide application on the basis of the fact that there is an understanding that he owns the land. If there's any question about that, and I'm not sure, quite frankly, from what I've heard, then he can't make that application, because you can't make an application for land that you don't own.
Yeah, you can. Could you just clarify, please?
So broadly speaking, you can, ignoring this case for a second, okay, you can, in oversimplistic terms, make an application for any bit of land you want,
Really?
okay? But you do have to certify within the form whether you own it or not, and whether, if you don't, you know who does. If you do, who they are, and then you have to notify them. If you don't know, then technically you have to put something in the paper, etc., etc. So broadly speaking, you can make an application for anything, anywhere. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but that's the headline. Clearly, if you make an application, as is quite often the case, for development on somebody else's land, then this council can approve it. But for sake of argument, if you got approval for something on Councillor MacDonald's land, you might struggle to build it without his consent. And often people get some kind of legal position in the land, so an option to purchase if they subsequently get planning permission. So broadly speaking, I agree with Ms Luckhurst entirely. Matters associated with land ownership here are civil issues between parties. Was the application made appropriately? Our view is yes. Secondly, is it acceptable or not? And again, you've heard the view already.
Thank you. I note your hand, Mr Smith, but you had your 3 minutes and you've had a considerable letter through to members. I think you've said enough to enable us to make our decision appropriately. No, sorry. Councillor Brown.
Yes, there's also an additional control by a landowner that sells off to a third party in the form of restrictive covenants governing what is developed, what is conditioned through the planning process. That's an opportunity that, landowners can make between themselves through, the civil law process.
Thank you. Councillor Holiday?
Do the deviations make this building closer or further away from the other building that's bookending the site? Which I think they were meant to be fairly similar. So are we deviating further away? Or?
No, so it's not moving further away. I mean, it still has the extension attaching to the neighbouring property, but the garage which would sit in between this dwelling and the neighbouring plot has now been removed. So there is now a gap in between, but it's not moving any closer.
Thank you. Anybody else? No. Right, there is a recommendation to approve subject to conditions listed. I need a proposer and seconder. Only forthcoming. Thank you, Councillor Fisher. Yes, did I see your hand go up there? Because who was it? Councillor Boyle. Ah, right. Hiding in the court behind Mr. Beattie. Okay, recommendations as on your papers. Can we go to a vote, please?
Councillor Beattie,
Approve.
Councillor Boyle,
4.
Councillor Brown,
4.
Councillor Fisher,
4.
Councillor Hankins, Councillor Heinrich,
4.
Councillor Holiday, Councillor MacDonald,
4.
Councillor Netherway, Councillor Catoy,
4.
and Councillor Vickers.
4.
It's unanimous.
Thank you. Recommendation to approve is agreed unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move rapidly to the final items on our agenda, the usual development management and performance updates. You may wish to take these as read, unless you have any major significant questions for officers, given the lateness of the hour. Yeah. Okay, if there are no questions, then I'll bring the meeting to a close at 13:29. Thank you.